Stream chat. Take a big drink to begin with. Well, I mean, shall we see what
No viewers.
No viewers. Okay, well.
I didn't run Discord this morning.
You didn't run Discord? Not test.
There could be important stuff there.
Well, it could be, but probably not.
Dashboard. I don't know what dashboard is. Pretty cool. Fenris Rat, Streamlabs.
Yes.
You're a moderator.
I am. Well, Fenris Rat is.
Fenris Rat is.
Huh. Bit kitty cats.
We got 4 Sunny, 2 thumbs up, and 3 cross swords
Ah.
for combat. But no viewers.
Well,
Should we start?
I guess we should start.
Hello, hello, hello!
Hi there. Welcome to yet another live
I
stream.
think I did pretty good, Calvin, there.
Calvin.
Yeah.
Okay. You need a little more goofiness to
let's-
your things. David TKI is running, or has our hero running away.
Or running George.
Or
Running George's name.
What's his name?
I think it's going to erase his name shortly.
Well, it should. That would be a cool cursor, you think? If it could.
You know, I'd put on a hat, except I'd get even warmer.
You keep saying that, so I think you're stuck. Any rate, welcome to yet another live stream. Our theme today is Hot August.
I've got all the hair I need.
Hot August fights, and
That's Lori Cole.
Yes, and that's Corey Cole.
And we're known collectively as the Coles.
Wow.
According to Wikipedia.
Good. Hello, Cole, says Schumann 3D.
Welcome, Schumann 3D Blast. Welcome, David DKI.
Yes.
So why doesn't our bot show that there are any viewers? Oh, stream offline, it says. That's not right.
Okay, well, that's a problem. That's why.
Stream offline, but our stream is online.
Well, that isn't working correctly.
No, let me restart the bot.
You need to.
Well, how is everyone doing today?
It's yeah, so effectively we may or may not be. But at least you guys are there.
I think we're sort of here.
Okay.
I think our bot isn't working right.
Ah, well, that's not good, but yeah.
Now we have 1 viewer, even though there's 2 people commenting, but it says we have 1 viewer. Things are a little bit out of date.
So at any
We're
rate,
so far back. I know. I usually turn this like this.
And usually you come back, and I go forward. But so we're not quite such a
Mismatch.
a difference in mismatch. Yes, there we go. There we try this again and see if the Twitch bot is working. Well, it shows.
Oh, that's better.
At
It
least
still says stream offline though. That's weird.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody here as well, although it's warm out here. It is definitely the hot August. And it does say that.
Update. Maybe that updates the program.
Who knows?
Oh well. Well, it's working, whether or not the bot's working. You guys
Yeah.
can see us fine. You can hear us fine.
Ah, well, thanks.
Billy meets Sloth.
It says, hey,
Says, hey, is that like a Billy Club meeting a Sloth?
I don't think so.
Messy results?
Sleepy and resting mostly. The QFG speed running community has been diving into the new Quest for Glory 1 EGA randomizer.
Perhaps you can explain what that is.
Yes, because I haven't heard that. Hello, Collective Coles. Haven't been able to make it for the past few weeks, but a fun little story for me.
Oh, good.
I went to a local Comic-Con and was wearing a shirt with the old Sierra logo. I met an author that had a book called Darts, the Paladin Thief. The title drew me in, thinking of Quest for Glory classics, and the author noticed my shirt, and the first set of games he mentioned was the Quest for Glory series. We got to talking about games, and he hadn't heard of Hero U yet, so I introduced him to that in summer days.
Well,
Yay!
good. And if everybody would do that 1,000 times per person, and get each of them to do 1,000 times per person, then we'll saturate the world in no time.
Could be. On this topic,
I don't have 1,000 friends, but
is Hike played many of these games for the first time recently and have no idea how some of the combat works. Yes. He's Britain from Larry Reloaded. Well, welcome. Yay. Quest for Glory 1 Randomizer is basically a patcher that will shuffle item locations, with possibilities such as Rage giving the Spirea seed, the healer selling Thieves Guild license, and other such oddities. Well, that will definitely alter the game. So hopefully he went out and bought a copy of Hero U. Yeah, we hope, yeah.
We certainly hope so. So effectively what you've done, what this randomizer has done is it has turned Quest for Glory 1 into Mixed Up Fairy Tales, because that's exactly how Mixed Up Fairy Tales work.
No, it didn't.
Didn't you have random locations?
No, they weren't random.
I thought you randomized stuff.
Well, maybe, but not much. I was thinking the real
I
random...
think so. I think the locations, the objects are randomized.
Did you ever play the ancient game with the first machines that had the bat and the castle and the key and the thief?
Yeah, that's called Adventure.
No, the Adventure on the Atari.
Yeah, it was the Atari VCS.
Yes, we had that, and so it would randomize where those locations were, and there were only like 8 objects in the whole game, but you had to run around trying to find them.
Yeah, what I found interesting is as Ken Roberta Williams are hyping up their new Colossal Cave Adventure VR version.
Either way, says it sounds like Mixed Up Mother Goose. There we go. It's
okay.
Mother Goose that did the randoms.
I think Mixed Up Fairy Tales did too.
I didn't.
Anyway, Colossal Cave Adventure. I recently read that the adventure on the Atari VCS was actually intended to, or was inspired by Colossal Cave Adventure, and they were both called Adventure. Colossal Cave was originally called Advent because they only allowed a certain number of letters.
Oh yes, they didn't have that many letters.
So the idea that those two games, the other game was called Adventure, but to me they're completely different games, but apparently they were both supposed to be sort of the same thing.
Well, it was a different interpretation.
Kind of like rogues and roguelikes and roguelites.
And the Baron given a reward of 1 measly silver, trademark, for the return of his son, which might be about what Barnard is worth, yes.
Well, it's certainly what the hero's work is worth. I mean, you're just stumbling in here and doing a bunch of stuff, and people pay you and stuff. That is,
Or maybe the Baron was in cahoots with the kobold to help take care of Barnard. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, somebody should have brought him bear chow every once in a while.
Yes, well, Barnard was a total jerk, but somebody had to raise Barnard to be a total jerk.
So, in reference to the combat in Quest for Glory 1, the way you do the combat in Quest for Glory 1 is you hit the up arrow key a whole lot.
Yeah. That wasn't supposed to be the way it is.
Yes, I worked out a sophisticated system with striking and dodging and parrying, and that you would be able to tell by reading the opponent's position when he was about to strike, and that was when you'd block it and so on. And in practice, the best way to take him out was to hit him so fast that he kept having to react to your hits and didn't have time to do any of his own.
Yep.
So we changed that a few times along the way.
Yes.
And that's kind of what today's about.
Yes. It's what it takes to try to make a good combat system, and why we put combat into games.
The really weird thing about Heroes Quest is that, considering the entire development cycle of the game was about 9 months, or 8 or 9 months, the fact that there was basically no playtesting of the combat, the fact that it actually came out pretty well balanced, and that the player could win. So I set myself a goal when I initially did the spreadsheets and stuff to come up with the combat system that effectively that a typical combat that was appropriate to the character would eat up about 1/3 of your health, between 1/3 and 1/2 of your health per combat. So let's say 30 to 40% of your health.
Yay for the subscription, Schumann. Thank you.
Thank you, Schumann.
It's Prime time.
Hooray! 14-month subscription with Prime. We must be doing something right, or maybe some people are just suckers.
Yeah. It's either that or they use Prime all the time. Like we do.
I don't have Prime. Lori does.
Yeah.
So I actually subscribe to some things, and I have to pay actual money to subscribe to my things on whatever it says, Twitch. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, combat. So yeah, the idea was that you would be able to win a combat in an appropriate area, but it would eat up about 30 to 40% of your health. So the idea was that you could do one combat, no problem at all. You could do 2 in a row and be kind of risky, and by 3 would be extremely risky and probably die. So the idea was you were supposed to use a healing potion or go somewhere to rest in between combats. And that actually played out pretty well. And most people seem to have been able to get through the game. Now, when I played the Quest for Glory 2 remake, I found it so twitchy, I couldn't play it. It was too hard for me. And that was because I was playing as a rogue, and they had balanced, quote, balanced the rogue combat with the assumption that the rogue would be throwing daggers from a distance and then maintaining their distance. And first of all, I couldn't work the controls fast enough to actually maintain my distance. And second, I only had 1 dagger because I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure how they expected you to have enough money to buy enough daggers to be able to throw a bunch of them.
Dave Orr said, that's why I scrolled up there, the difference between dodge and block in Quest for Glory 1.
Where is it?
It was above Schumann's blast. And keep going down, down.
Nope.
There, above that.
Above this.
Yes. Above Schumann's subscription.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
What's the difference between dodge and block in UFC 1? The idea basically was that block was specifically a shield block and would only be available to the fighter character who was doing sword and board fighting.
Yeah.
And that if you were not carrying a shield, then you needed to dodge. And did we also parry, or did we add that later?
Parry, I think, was later, but yeah.
Rogue possibly could parry with his dagger. The wizard basically wasn't skilled. Magic user wasn't skilled at any of the combat, so he was able to dodge at best.
Okay, so David, who actually knows these things, parrying scales up a little more slowly, but if you have a shield, starts out more effective. Interesting. Okay.
Oh, so it was called parry rather than block.
Okay. Parrying and dodging break even at max stats if you have a shield. Interesting. How come you went real-time combat with Quest for Glory anyway? With your
tabletop role-playing game.
It seems an interesting choice. Well, especially since he played a lot of the Heroes of Might and Magic style, the turn-based combat things.
That was later.
Still, there were turn-based combat games out there.
Yeah, no, so what we were playing a lot of, what I played prior to coming to Sierra, was a little bit of Wizardry, and we played a lot of Dungeon Master.
Yeah, but then we also played, Ultima. We
played Ultima IV, Quest for the Avatar. I'm not sure about Ultima IV. Wizardry was turn-based, and you basically had a team of players, and you went through and basically said what each character team was doing, and then the game would kind of work out what order people went in and how well things worked.
Yeah.
Dungeon Master was real-time.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the bigger influence on us. We loved Dungeon Master. We thought it was a great game. Their sequel, Chaos Strikes Back, we never really got into it. I got it immediately and then started playing it, and it was just too hard.
Yeah.
Too much of a leap, especially since we hadn't played the game for a couple of years, and then come back into the sequel without having the reflexes for playing it. But the idea in Dungeon Master that we kind of adopted / stole was that each move, like a sword strike or so on, had a cooldown. And this also related, I'm trying to think, the Caltech Warlock variant on D&D that I played in quite a bit for tabletop had tried to have a more realistic system where they had complex, hit locations and stuff like that. But it still wasn't real time. Just because, dice rolling, it's real time and be chaotic. But yeah, Dungeon Master had real-time combat, and the idea was that you had a cooldown on each move or casting a spell or making an attack before you could do it again. And
Well, the question was why, though?
because it was fun.
Why? Because it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought
Because-
that we wanted to have people really immersed in the game, and we felt that by having the real-time combat, that it would feel exciting and active, and you're there now.
Yeah, because I felt that adventure games are really cerebral and hit your head against a puzzle, and you don't have a lot of emotional investment in the game. And combat gives you that emotional investment because you begin to relate to your character, and you don't want that character to die. And so having it real time versus the turn-based, once again, is a thinking person's game. It's about figuring out what your moves should be and then watching the game actually play it out, as opposed to real-time combat, which is World of Warcraft and things like that, which of course there was no World of Warcraft there, but that kind of feel that you're on the edge of your seat and you've got this excitement about, oh my God, am I going to make a mistake here? Am I going to die? And that's, and so that creates a whole new layer to the game.
And I'm thinking now that World of Warcraft should be turn-based because it's a little embarrassing after playing the game for 20 years and having people that started playing the game 6 months ago be better than me and my characters that I've worked up all that time.
Yep.
I just don't have the reflexes, or I don't quite get the rotations right.
Yep.
But it's a lot of it is anticipation of sweet anticipation. That figure out when you're going to have to move, and that you've got a 1 second or 1.5 second cast time in your spell. It feels like forever in World of Warcraft, and
Yep.
so a lot of times I have to interrupt in the middle of my spell. And meanwhile, the people that have this timed out perfectly are never interrupting their spells and are doing more damage than I do.
Yeah, Buck Rogers says he threw rocks, which is the right way to do it, yes. And so when it came to making Hero U, our thought was always to make Hero U combat turn-based. And why was that? Well, it's because we wanted, especially when we made the rogue be the main character, we wanted it to be, again, a thinking person's problem of how to set a trap or get around a corner so they can't cast a spell on you, to make it actually a puzzle with every combat. And so that was a different philosophy that we were pulling
We also
from.
wanted to make it based on the character skill rather than player
Player
twitch
twitch skill, yeah.
So the original plans for Hero U Combat had a very complex system of I don't know if initiative is the right term. It was basically speeds for different weapons. That some of the weapons were faster, some of the attacks, the spells took longer, and that basically that you would have essentially continuous action going on. But if you were doing a certain very speedy weapon, or you had high agility skill, then you might get in 2 attacks per round, whereas the monster would only get 1 really strong attack, and so on. And in practice, we went through the idea of putting in your commands and then kind of queuing up all your actions you wanted to do. And first of all, that was a little cumbersome and not very involving. And second, that it was just impossible to get the animation to work right. So animation really has been a major factor in how our systems work. So when we were doing Quest for Glory 2, I think it was 2 or 3, we started getting real animators that were trying to do more sophisticated animation of the characters. And there was just an amazing sword swing sequence that the one artist came out with. But remember in the late 80s, early 90s, that Sierra games were optimized at 10 frames per second. The modern idea that games should go at 60 frames per second or higher was totally impossible on hardware at the time. So everything was 10 frames per second. So if you had a sword swing that was ultra realistic and took 15 frames, that was a 1.5 seconds to go through the swing, and it felt terrible. So we ended up going with less realistic animation and just taking like 3 or 4 keyframes instead of the entire 15 frame sequence, and doing it so that the hero and monster attacks looked like they were kind of in sync. But we tried to make it so that with the real-time combat, the idea that we tried to kind of line it up, so if the player was doing a block, that the monster would actually have an attack that clearly missed because of the block or something like that. And we actually had missed attacks and hit attacks, and I don't know if we had critical attacks per se. I think we might have.
Okay.
So it was a lot of back and forth trying to get the animation to look right and to be smooth, but also to be fast enough.
Right. Divor says, since the sort of fear of death kind of thing was an intended emotional death, did you ever test out a different saving system rather than save before a fight and see if I would win? Testing is this idea that we actually tested anything we did. No, we didn't test anything. Yeah, we never got to, and so it was always rush out the edge.
Yeah, rather than testing, what we had was design discussions.
Yes.
So Lori and I would work back and forth. Okay, what should we do on this? Or I would work with Bob Fischbach or one of the other programmers and say, how can we make this work? So one of the things we did, what was I going to say? The saving system. Yeah. So there's basically 3 or 4 ways of saving a game. One is, of course, none at all. Arcade games frequently have the save at the beginning of a level, or their particular
save points.
Yeah, yes. Save points. So they have places of safety where you can save, and you can't save anywhere else in the game. And there were some reasons for that having to do with memory. That actually, on the very early machines, when you only had a few bytes of memory to store the save in, and you had to really restrict how you could do it. But it was also the idea that this level was designed for a player to learn the level and be skilled at it, and if they can save in the middle of it, that takes it away. So this is what you're talking about as far as the save before a fight and see if I win. So in theory, in a Sierra game, you could save anywhere, except we had a concept called hands-off, and hands-off is where the computer took control and the player could not do any input actions. And that was frequently used, like if you walked up to a door, then the action of reaching out, open the door opening, which it's not you opening the door because we didn't have that sophisticated animation, but we had an action for the player, we had an action for the door, and then the player walks through, and we change things the other side. We would turn hands off on that so that the player could not suddenly, cast a flame dart in the middle of walking through a doorway, which would have completely broken the game.
As for the save before a fight to see if I could win, honestly, even if we had even thought about that, which we didn't really consider that until afterwards that you could do this sort of thing, it doesn't bother me. It's like cheating in a game. If a player owns a game and knows how to cheat or do a speed run such that they skip 80% of the game to get to the end, if they like doing that, yes, have fun, because that's the whole point of the game. If you don't like combat and you're so afraid of losing that you have to save before each combat, good for you.
And along those lines, cheating, when I was a preteen, I used to cheat at solitaire. But yeah, I played the variation of solitaire where you turn over 3 cards at a time. Yep. And you're not allowed to see what the other cards were. But I would get to a point where I was stuck in the game and about having to throw it away and redeal. At that point, I would look at the hidden cards and maybe slip one under the bottom of the deck so that I could then keep turning over 3 cards and get new cards. And that was just to save time, so I didn't have to do a new deal. Yeah, whichever way the player plays our games is the right way.
Yes. That's one thing we decided right away. It's not about the game designer versus the player. It's about game designer and the player having fun.
But I was leading to something with the hands-off thing. Is that we effectively took you hands off during combat in the sense that the only inputs we allowed were the combat inputs, and we did not allow saving game during combat. And that was a very deliberate decision for two reasons. And the specific example I thought of was fighting the troll that is going to, is a combat you're normally supposed to avoid, and it's too tough for most players, is I didn't want players to min-max it by maybe landing one hit on the troll, saving game in the middle of the combat, and then reloading that game over and over again until they hit it again, and winning the combat that way. So I thought that would be too cheesy, and it would destroy immersion. It would make the, it a game about saving the game and restoring the game instead of about fighting in combat. And the second reason is I didn't want players to screw themselves over.
Which human did?
Human screwed himself over?
Yeah.
At age 10 or so, a friend and I lost a nearly finished Quest for Glory 1 game by saving with the hero right above the carpet-covered pit in the Brigand Fortress. Oh, good for you. Yes, you should have been hands off there.
Yes.
And you also should have had multiple saves. We only learned that through doing it.
Yes.
And a lot of players are used to older systems that only allowed one save. So we allowed multiple saves. But, yeah, I did not want players to save in the middle of that troll combat and suddenly realize, and of course you're saving in a panic maybe because you've just been hit for 80% of your health. And all of a sudden you realize that you have no way out. That your save game, no matter how well you play it, you can't win from that point. So we didn't want players to do that. So that's why you can save before a combat, but not during. Yep. Now, you can still save where you're so close to the troll that you can't get away from it.
Yeah, you can still make mistakes,
yeah.
But,
So we did not want players to be stuck to where they could not win the game. Yeah, Dungeon Master was a great, very well-balanced game. Had a few bugs we ran into. The most fun one was we got into the end game, where you're fighting a very powerful wizard who uses fire magic, and you have various fire protection items you can acquire during the game, and there's a spell of Fire Shield that all reduce your damage.
And we were, we had everything.
Yeah,
we had all the gear. We had every spell. We were all prepared for this fight.
And then all of a sudden we got one-shotted.
Yeah.
And we said, "Oh my God, he's that tough?"
Yeah.
And eventually, through experimentation, one time I forgot to cast Fire Shield, and we won the combat relatively easily. And it was like, what? What happened there? And I eventually realized as a programmer that it's that we had gotten our protection level over probably over 128. Might have been 256, but let's say it was over 128.
Better for that era. Yeah.
And we suddenly, it's probably designed you could have 100% protection. So we got 130% protection, and that all of a sudden got into negative numbers and signed arithmetic in 8 bits, and we ended up with negative 126% instead of positive 130%. Something like that. So we ended up getting so much fire resistance that our fire resistance was negative.
Yeah.
So that was a fun little thing that made the game extremely exciting. We died constantly.
Yes, it was. And it wasn't very, until it got frustrating to the point.
Yeah, it was exciting until it was frustrating.
Yes, we realized, these monsters are so darn tough. We got to do this just, optimal.
Yeah, 8-Bit Kitty responded, Schumann, that's why you always make multiple saves. And of course, at the age of 10, you don't necessarily have that sophistication
you
yet.
didn't necessarily learn it until the last moment.
Yeah, you haven't necessarily played enough games that have Deadman walking scenarios.
Yes.
We tried to avoid those. We tried to never get you in a situation where you forgot to pick up something early in the game and died later. Classic example of that was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a wonderfully fun but terribly frustrating game. And one of the things that happens in that is in the opening scene, you go out your...
Yay! Thank you for the subscription.
Oh, thank you. You got your front door and somebody has dropped off, the mailman has dropped off your pile of junk mail. And if you don't pick up the pile of junk mail, a couple scenes later, you're in a dead man walking situation.
For the rest of the game.
For
a long period.
Yeah, you'll never get through the game.
Yeah.
And so that is just bad game design.
And, one we tried more consciously not to do, and we did have some. But
nobody intentionally puts those into a game, but players are very creative at not doing things the way intended.
I heard another maxim as well. Players will optimize the fun out of a game, which is kind of what you're talking about with your troll game. I think it's a bit of a balancing act. Yes, but, as long as the players are getting something out of it, that's the important thing.
Yeah, we don't mind players playing the game the way they want to play it, but we don't want to make it so that they feel they have to do that.
Yeah.
So if they feel like they have to fight the troll, and the only way to fight the troll is to minimax their behavior, then we forced them into something that isn't part of the game world.
Right. I recently finished the Playdate game Castle Helios.
Helios.
Oh, it's Helios. Yes. Hello. Hello.
Hellos, Helios.
Yes. Which is like a cross between Metroid and Zelda 2, but not nearly as tough as those two NES games. Castle Helios had a good balance, not too hard nor too easy, with a good progression of items and skills. That's the right way to do it.
Our grandson's name is Elio, which is related to Helios.
Yes.
He's my son's son, and he's also the son.
Yes. Overflowed it. Yes, we overflowed it.
Overflowed Dungeon Master.
Yeah, those kind of bugs are fun until you get hit with them.
Yeah, there's a similar bug in the save character system in Quest for Glory, where each game you save your character so you can import it into the next game. And at one point, I had a conflict between signed and unsigned 16-bit arithmetic, and it went over 32,768, which caused it to the signed bit ended up screwing up the data in the rest of the stream, because I had a encoding thing that encrypted it by doing XORs across the entire stream of data, and so that propagated the error all the way through the end, and we ended up having to guess at what your character. There were other bugs in the character save also.
Yes.
Not all, which were my fault, and even that one was actually not my fault. It was because nobody changed the system in between Quest for Glory 1, where the numbers were smaller, and by Quest for Glory 4, the numbers were a lot bigger.
They just passed the code on, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, let's see. To be fair, it was because I was used to playing Sierra games at 10, yes. Yes, let's see. I wonder what the longest Deadman walking marathon situation might be in a game. Perhaps Police Quest 3 might be a strong contestant.
Well, there actually is one that is not a game design bug, but was just a bug. In Quest for Glory 2, the Deadman walking situation is if you spend a lot of time out in the desert and you fight a lot of Jackalman combats. Yeah. Jackalman was the great innovation that I put in for the Quest for Glory 2 combat, where you would have multiple opponents at a time. I decided it was too hard to actually fight all of them at once, and you'd probably die anyway. So they come at you one at a time, and they kind of the bodies pile up. But the problem with that is there was a very subtle memory leak having to do with the multiple opponents that I burned out on it because of that. I couldn't fix it. And we handed it over to Brian Hughes, and he did his best.
I'm not sure we realized at that point about what...
We knew something was wrong. We didn't know what it was. We knew something was wrong. But it turns out it was a memory leak, and that doesn't really bite you until the extremely memory-intensive scenes at the end of the game, when you get into the palace in Rasir.
That's where it would crash.
And the game would crash.
And you thought it was the palace in Rasir that was the problem.
And it was actually the Jackalman in the desert that you maybe played weeks ago. Yep. Saved the game, and every time you saved the game, you were saving...
there we go. There's
the save system in Sierra included all the memory leaks.
David TKI says, Fred doesn't like you messing with his stuff. He gives you the bonk, which Jacobin actually demonstrates. Bonk. And Twitchy Mark said you could waste the Dispel Potion pretty easily in Quest for Glory 1. That was bad.
Were you not able to recreate it?
Especially the VGA version, yeah. Yes. That's probable.
Yeah, there were some new problems with the VGA version of Quest for Glory 1.
Oh, thanks for the
following.
Yes.
Hey, it's Joe time.
Yeah.
Thank you. So some things happened between Quest for Glory 1, EGA, and VGA. The art was really good in the VGA version. We were really pleased with that, and the animation got better. I think the audio was better too, unless you had an MT32 when you played the first game. Not very many players did. But machines were much faster by then, and the adaptations of some of the old code, people took the real-time nature of the game a little too seriously, and it was a little too real-time. And one of them was when you walk into the graveyard, if you have not already used the undead unguent, you instantly die because it goes hands off, and then the ghosts float over to you and kill you. And that was the period at which you were supposed to use the potion, but you couldn't because you were hands off the unguent. There's a problem even in the EJ version with Baba Yaga, that if you visited Baba Yaga late at night, which you were likely to do, and got your Gaius to pick the Mandrake route at midnight, and in order to do that, you had to get the undead unguent, which means you had to visit the healer hut, and the healer isn't open at night. So if you went to Baba Yaga at night, you were a dead man walking. Yeah. Before midnight. If you did it after midnight, you were okay, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, so these are just things we didn't think of.
Yes, we weren't.
But the Brigand cafeteria in the VGA version, I felt like the action was too fast. Although I actually went back to the original game and found it was pretty fast in the original too.
Okay.
But you really had to time your movements absolutely perfectly and know in advance what they were going to be, even though the game doesn't really give you enough foreshadowing to let you know what you have to do.
Yeah,
until you played it 2 or 3 times.
Right, we really didn't know.
So that was kind of unfair.
Yeah. 8-Bit Kitty Cat says, the fact that you were able to make the first 4 Quest for Glory games in that time span that you did, and that they're great games, is an amazing achievement. Makes the bugs that did slip through excusable.
Well, thank you for excusing us.
Yes, we do. And remember, we were learning. We didn't know what we were doing either, so we had to learn as we went along, which is why every game we change things just to try to get things better, and that's why our combat system constantly was slightly different in the next version. So
the history of Heroes Quest is that we got a call about 10 o'clock at night one night from Carly Hawksdaughter, who we knew from science fiction conventions and folk singing and role-playing, tabletop role-playing. And she said that she was an animator working at Sierra, and that she'd been in a meeting with Ken Williams and all the designers, and that they were looking for a award-winning something or other, tournament-level dungeon master to make a role-playing game for them. And we all kind of laughed about that. I said, well, if you take each of those terms separately, we can find a way they fit. So Carly got us in touch with Ken, and we originally interviewed with the idea of making a game like Heroes Quest. He was really,
Ultima.
Well, yeah, he was thinking of a game like Ultima, but a role-playing game.
Yeah.
Except he actually hired me to write the interpreter, convert the interpreter SCI from MS-DOS over to the Atari ST, because I knew Atari ST programming, and he needed that. So I went to work there in like March or April, something like that. Meanwhile, Lori stayed back in San Jose with our baby, and in around June or July, they moved back in with me, and we had a meeting with Ken and showed them so we came up with essentially a proposal for Heroes Quest, and showed that off to Ken, did a little presentation, and showed off my Tower of Indomitable Circumstance module to say, yes, I'm a published author, and that kind of thing. Ken liked it, but he still had me on the SCI conversion, so that took all my time. But he said, okay, Lori, why don't you direct this game and, write up a design for it and do it. Well, that took basically, that went through the rest of the year. And around December, we finally started talking seriously about getting a team for it, doing it, and started development on the game in January of '89. And the game was released in October of '89. So And there was about 6 months of preliminary work and
Yes.
pre-design, but
And learning what we couldn't do and having all the game things. Okay, that doesn't work. This doesn't work. This didn't work, and having to revise everything about how to do it.
yeah, our proposal had I think 4 character classes, and each one was a different race. One of them was an elf, one was like a gnome, one was a centaur, archer, and a human.
Yeah.
So we cut that down to 3. Bob Heitman explained how the animation system in Sierra worked, which I've been working with now for a while, developing converting SCI, and it said your first scene here. We've got our sample scene that. Did you draw the sheriff's office originally?
I drew everything.
Yeah, so Lori did like a crayon drawing or a colored pencil drawing.
Colored pencil. Yeah.
Colored pencil of the opening scene with the sheriff and the goon. And Bob said, okay, you got those stairs there. You want the character to walk up the stairs. Well, we ended up not having the character walk up the stairs.
Yeah.
He says, do you know what will happen if you try to make a centaur walk, a quadruped walk up those stairs? The animation won't work. Horses just don't walk like people. Our system's designed for people walking. You could have a horse walking back and forth in a field, but never up or down stairs.
Yeah, and that, and the fact we couldn't have animation for anything, so therefore we had to everything got rewritten and
said we wanted the character to be either male or female. I said, okay, now you have to double up every piece of animation throughout the game.
And as it is, we fit on how many discs?
Yeah, so we were our budget I think was 4 discs, and we actually went on somewhere between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
So it was, and that cut into profits. They don't like that. But the pre-orders in the game were higher than anything they'd had in years, and they like that.
Yeah. So they did. They seriously did have moments where they thought they might cancel the game in midstream because they had no clue of this game that was so large. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody understood games, for one thing.
Yeah, the storyline we got was that we were called into Ken's office to demonstrate the game and showed it off, and Ken was saying, and we went out, and then our producer, Gruka Singh Khalsa, was in the meeting with us, and he told us later that Ken said, I just don't get this game. Is this even fun? And I remember one version, Lori remembers another version. Lori remembers there was either his son Chris or DJ that said, this game's great!
Yeah.
It's awesome!
That's the version I remember.
And I remembered Gruka saying that.
Gruka liked our game.
Gruka
He believed in our game,
yeah,
but I don't think Gruka had the pull then either.
Yeah.
So I think it had to be the son.
But Ken's sons had the pull.
Yeah.
And Ken came out of the meeting finally saying, this game's great! It's going to be awesome!
Yeah.
So that was the time. I was almost fired like 2 weeks into working at Sierra because I didn't even have a computer at my desk yet. I had
You've told that many times. So.
Okay.
But yes, our time at
we
Sierra was always precarious. Let's put it this way.
Working for Sierra was a roller coaster ride of exhilarating moments and terrifying ones, and sometimes they were the same.
Infuriating moments. Don't forget the infuriating ones. Yes, at least in Quest for Glory 1, you had to do something dumb to put themselves in a dead man walking situation. Other games have been more along the lines of you forgot to pick up an item, now you are out of luck. Yes, exactly. Oh, I think I've gotten that crash. Yeah, probably. I could not figure out what was going on in the end scene, which reflecting fireballs or something.
Yeah, and unfortunately it had very little to do with... Well, okay, so there is the reflecting fireballs. So we foreshadowed in the fight against the kobold that he had a reversal spell that would turn your spells against you. So if you cast a flame dart at the kobold, he would cast reversal and reflect back and maybe hit you. Or at least bounce around the room a lot. That caused some other bugs, but we got those fixed. So in Quest for Glory 2, the Wizard out of Ys had a reversal spell. So if you tried to have a straight magical combat with him, you couldn't win because he would reverse all your spells back at you. So you had to do the indirection of cast, I think it was the fetch spell on one of the candles to knock it over.
Or the force bolt on it.
Or a force bolt, yeah. So basically it had to knock over one of the candles that he was using around his Was it a hexagram?
Yeah.
It was a six-pointed star, which we got flack over later from the Jewish Defense League, but too similar to the Star David. But, unintentional.
The fact that they're one and the same, and
They are.
that it's the Seal of Solomon and was appropriate for that era, had nothing to do with the problem. So, yeah.
Yep, anyway. That was an indirection. That might not have actually been the bug, but the game crashed because there wasn't enough memory to animate all the things.
Yeah. So, how difficult was it to convert the game engine to work on the Atari ST?
It was probably almost insanely difficult, and it was a miracle that I pulled it off. So my editor that I had in the Atari ST was very primitive and crashed a lot. So I actually did almost all, at that point SCI was about 2/3 C language and 1/3 assembly language in 8086 assembly. And I had to convert it to 68,000 assembly for the Atari ST. I had to go from a segmented model to a flat memory model, and I did all this on yellow legal pads. So I had about 20 or 30 yellow legal pads completely full of assembly language code, which I then later typed into the very primitive editor on the Atari ST, and somehow got it to work.
Yep.
I did learn some good software engineering lessons from Bob Heitman working with him. He's a genius. He was a self-taught programmer whose background was
mentally,
theater.
yes, but actually mentally had the right brain to be a good.
Yeah, so he was a great.
He was a scientist
and a workaholic,
yes.
which helps too.
Yeah. Okay, so R.I.P. the Underground Goblin Lair. That was fairly late in the game where we decided we did not have the time or the resources to do that one.
Yeah, so as the number of discs was ballooning on this,
we kept having to, we were cutting and pasting and removing as we went along.
Now, what we didn't understand on shipping on floppy disks, so each floppy disk held 360K of data, and we thought, okay, so if we have 4 floppy disks, then we've got a little bit over a megabyte of data.
Uh-huh.
And so that's pretty generous periods of time. We had extreme compression on the art and so on. What we didn't understand is that you had your character who walks around and who bends down, picks things up, and who throws things and casts magic spells and this and that and the other thing. And that data had to go on every single floppy disk because people at that time were not loading their floppy disks onto a hard drive. They were playing directly from the floppies. So if in 5 different scenes of the game that were on different disks, the character was throwing something, a throwing animation had to be in every disk or you'd force the player to swap.
Yep.
So we found out that actually about 180K of each floppy was tied up with data that was on every single disk.
That is why we had the
and that's why
4,
we ballooned
3 1/4, and 10, 5 1/2.
Yes, the 3.5 inch were double density. They held 720K. By the second game, we switched to requiring high density 5 1/4 inch discs, and it reversed. Now it took 4 5 1/4 high density discs, and it was 8 or 10 720K 3.5 inch discs.
Okay. I guess centaurs wouldn't have a very high climbing skill. Imagine a centaur trying to scale the castle walls. Yeah, it's not very practical for that.
So yeah, that animation, but and also the just even having the separate races and each one needed its own set of animations. That's why your hero looks the same whether he's a magic user or a fighter or a thief.
Yeah, no costume changes, no nothing.
Yep, and there's no such thing as a female character. Which is unfortunate. I mean, Laurie obviously wanted to write a game where you had a choice of gender.
Yeah. I'm so glad it didn't get canceled. Heroes Quest was one of my first PC games, and playing it with my older brother is one of the first times we actually got along. Yeah.
Hey.
I played a lot with my brother, too. A lot of things. And generally opposed, on other sides of the tale, All right, I think by the time I first heard about Quest for Glory 5, Dragonfire in development around 1997, I didn't even realize at the time that the series had been canceled. So great that the series was completed,
Yeah, so there was a big layoff I think it was called Black.
Whatever
Yeah.
there was talk about having Quest for Glory on console, yeah, well, that's another story.
Well, actually, the whole reason that the game system went from parser-based to the point and click was partly because Ken wanted to make more money by getting all the games onto consoles, and consoles didn't have keyboards, so he needed a non-keyboard interface. The second reason for it was that by far the biggest part of the interpreter, and this was kind of a be careful what you wish for situation, because Sierra hired Pablo Guenes, who's a computer science PhD, to revamp the parser, and he made it a very sophisticated natural language processing system that would understand just about anything you could type in, and had adverbs and all kinds of stuff in the parser. And as a result, that became about 1/3 of all of the source code in the entire interpreter was the parser. So when they said, okay, now we got to find something to trim because we're going to VGA and we need 4 times as memory, so you got twice as many bits and twice the resolution. So it was 4 times as much memory for the graphics, and they said this interpreter's too big. We can't fit all this in. And they said, oh, parser. We'll just cut the parser out entirely, and voila, the interpreter is, is 2/3 of the size. And that also is compatible with going to consoles. And I think Ken actually worked, I think there was a King's Quest was converted to consoles by an outside developer. And the idea was eventually to move all the games to consoles, and it just didn't happen.
Well, you did the Sega Genesis.
I did the Sega Genesis. Yeah, I was put in charge of converting to the Sega Genesis CD.
And that was impossible. So
it seemed really possible because the CD, it's,
yeah,
that's lots of space, but that's lots of disk space. It isn't lots of memory, and the memory was only like 512K. And at this point, PCs had gone from the 640K that we started with, now had like 4 megabytes of memory. Wasn't up to gigabytes yet.
Yes,
but it was
there was
megabytes.
never any announcement of the series being canceled. Sierra never talked about the things they stopped doing.
Yeah,
they just stopped.
So I had gotten into kind of an argument with the programming manager because he had been given the mandate from top management to cut the budget of all the games by 20%. And I said, Quest for Glory 4 was completely unplayable when it went out. We took another year to fix it up to make it playable, and we can't have another development effort like that. It'll make the company look bad. So I said, you can't reduce our budget. You got to raise our budget so we have enough time for testing and QA and making sure the game's clean. And he basically said, no, management doesn't give me that leeway. We can't do that. And then about the same time, Sierra laid off about 2/3 of the employees.
And broke our contract.
Yeah, broke our contract. Well, yeah. But that was partly because of the layoff happening, partly because of the move from Oakhurst up to Bellevue, Washington, and partly because of trying to do cost reductions to the games. Yes. And I said we can't make these games more cheaply.
Yep. I think games were better back then because the technical limitations forced more creativity than Flash. There's give and take for both of those things. They did require creativity, but the Flash is the thing that sells the games in a lot of cases.
Yeah. The big thing that Sierra had going for them was, I mentioned I started out converting the interpreter. Well, that interpreter was the huge value. Not value proposition. There's a term for it. But anyway, it was the competitive advantage that Sierra had. Was that they had SCI, and SCI allowed the developers to only think about the design of the games and the artistry of the games, and very quickly build adventure games. Now, all the adventure games kind of felt pretty similar to each other, because they all had the typed-in commands, they all had character walking across the screen and so on. But, by having different story for each game, they had a lot of different games, but they were all very quick to build, and that's how we were able to make games in less than a year.
Right.
Is we were not making animation systems for each game.
Yeah.
We were not making the voice, or text parsers for each game. We just had to use within the parser, define what statements were allowed, and that was a pretty quick process.
Buck Rogers said he recently purchased Doom Eternal. Why? Just to see the ray tracing. That's not a very good reason to send it to game.
Oh, well.
Yes.
The big movement was the Hollywood movement, where they were going to do all
full motion video.
Yeah, motion capture and movies, make games into movies effectively, and that was the holy grail in the industry that everybody was searching for, because everybody wanted to hit the mass market. And so,
yes, the mass market was the real holy grail.
What I call the mythical mass market.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, eventually they hit the mass market. It just wasn't with games that we wanted to play.
Right, because it turns out that the mass market is mostly consists of most people aren't that smart.
Well, smart. They want something action. They want action-packed. They don't have to think.
They want sports. They want,
Yes, that's when they hit the mass market. Yeah.
So we kind of actually started to hit that by putting real-time combat in Heroes Quest.
But we had
so
too much other stuff.
We brought in more players that had not.
Yeah.
Mostly we reached Sierra players.
We reached Sierra players because Sierra mostly marketed to that and
to their own players.
Yes, definitely. Sounds similar to the old black and white films versus modern films. Older films had to focus on characters and stories because the special effects and stunts were too complex to do decades ago. That is true. And you can watch some of these very stylish things. Some are dated. I mean, like, look at the early, the classic Dracula is just laughable in places because it's so, the style is just so dated, but it's beautiful.
Well, the story I used to tell is that Lori and I got into the game industry at exactly the perfect time, because I had actually, 5 years earlier, had tried to get into the game industry. And when I first moved up to San Jose, I was talking to like Automated Simulations, Epix, EPYX, and companies like that. And I couldn't figure out that what I thought were these companies that were making creative games were actually working out of their parents' garages and stuff. They were not very professional back then, and failed to do it. So by the time we got into Sierra, we were no longer on, like the Apple II with 48K maximum memory, and then CPM machines that had maximum 64K of memory. That now we were starting to have machines that started at 256K and up.
Wow.
And
we started at the best time.
Yeah, and that they could actually, animate actions and so on. And this stuff just, so Temple of Apshai was one of the first role-playing games. And it had a book that came with the game. And that basically, as you got to each location of the game, it gave you a number, 27. And that meant you had to turn to paragraph 27 of the book, which described the setting of the room. They did not have enough memory to put a description of a room on the computer. It was that tight. So we came in kind of at the perfect time to be able to really tell stories in a game. And before it got so complex and sophisticated that they would never take a chance on newbies like us, because games took millions of dollars to build.
QA, testing, who needs those? Hey, check out this beautiful dumpster fire! Yes.
Well, Sierra had a dedicated QA department, and they had about half a dozen people or more in it.
They recognized the need for it. They just didn't always allocate the time in the schedule for it.
Well, it was, but that was our fault.
Well.
See, it was our fault because we were supposed to have finished our game in June or July.
Yes.
So games were supposed to be done in 4 to 6 months. And that would allow you,
Plenty
3 months to test and improve
Yes.
on it before it had to get into store shelves in October, shipped in October, manufactured in September, shipped in October, on store shelves in November, had to be on store shelves before Black Friday or it was a failure.
Okay. So, do you remember who did the motion capture for the hero in the VGA games? I can only imagine that someone would have looked like, dressed up like him. Well, all right. First 2 games, no motion capture. Quest for Glory 3 and I don't know if we did I don't know if the VGA remake did motion capture. I think 3.
Well, VGA remake was the claymation.
Yeah. So 3 was the only game where they used motion capture for. And actually, I don't know who did the hero. I think just any random person for movement, because we didn't have I mean, I did a kata, Corey did Adavis. We had Babalu as our manager for that. We had a little room out in the middle of...
Babalu?
Yeah, Babalu.
Babalu.
Yes. They had a warehouse room out that we would go to, and all it had was a camera
and a treadmill.
And a treadmill, and that was our stage.
I kept falling off the treadmill. It was really difficult to stay stable on that.
Why were you walking at all? Because you didn't for Adavis.
I think I did. I did a walking thing for him, and then I was doing the mystical hand gestures, or at least it felt that way to me.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was motion captured, just basically sitting in my face and so on.
All they really were
Police
doing,
Quest.
Yes. They actually used the images for Police Quest, though. They made people look like the actors. Whereas for the motion capture, it was just effectively rotoscoped over. They did the drawing over the motion. So
I don't know who was the hero.
I don't either. I do know. I mean, Richard Aronson played Ollie, which was typecasting Oliver Hardy for the Easter egg of Laurel and Hardy walking through the deserts and things like that.
Myst and the Sims were the mass market. No parcel, little no interest out of me.
Yeah.
Well, my problem with Myst, I was actually very interested in Myst, and the problem with Myst is that I had the AT&T 6300 that I built to work with Gem Development when we were doing our desktop publishing system, and that was about 5 to 10 years out of date, and I ran Myst on it and got into the second or third room and crashed, froze. We played Seventh Guest in that machine and thought that was just, the most dramatic, the slow pan around.
And all the motion was slow.
Everything was in slow motion and ghostly, and it was perfect for Seventh Guest. And I later discovered that, no, that wasn't what the game looked like at all. That was what it looked like on a really slow 8086 or 286 machine.
The original Dracula's castle also
86.
had armadillos in it. Go explain that. Oh, Dracula, you and your silly zoo. I did not know they had armadillos in it. The original Frankenstein movie had that huge set. That set was incredible with all those electrical things going up and down what is it? What are those things called? The electrical stuff. The
Jacob's Ladder.
Jacob's Ladder. All of those were real. They were totally real. I got to see them in person at a convention years ago when I was just starting to go to conventions, and they had the whole set there with all of those operating things, and once a day they could actually start them up and run them, and it took all the electricity out of the building practically to run them, but it was so awesome.
And there's no substitute for being able to see everything in the world on the internet, but there's also no substitute for direct experience.
Yes.
And seeing these things in person, seeing that kinetic water spitting sculpture they had outside the Phoenix Convention Center, that inspired the Seed Spitting Spirea. You have to have seen these things to say, oh, that could be really cool. So the problem with Buck Rogers' wishes, we could have built a couple of gold box games. I think Lori would have chafed tremendously at trying to do gold box, because yes, she's a good writer, but she, her background is art and animation. And sculpture, and really likes to make things. The artistry of it is just as important as the words, and Gold Box was just too limited for that.
Done in 4 or 5 to 6 months. That's crazy.
Okay, so crazy actually came up. So we actually had 9 months that we did Heroes Quest, and then actually it was 10 months, I guess, and then 11 months for Quest for Glory 2, which made us miss Christmas and pissed off management, but we got the game out eventually. But the 4 to 6 months came up when Ken came up with his next great idea. So his first great idea was, let's get into the role-playing game market, and because I want a piece of that. Then his next great idea was, well, let's get into educational games, because we used to make educational games, and that's a market that we haven't saturated yet. We should do that. and that's when I did Castle Dr. Brain, and Lori did Mixed Up Fairy Tales, and I managed the programming in both of those. But meanwhile, there was going on EcoQuest, which was designed by Gaynell Hayne and James Denson. And James Denson, of course, later went on to do work on a King's Quest and then do Gabriel Knight. And Gaynell Hayne actually left the company, the big layoff, and then she went to work for Electronic Arts and later for, I think, for Microsoft. But EcoQuest was a game in which they came to. I was the at that point manager of all the educational games and the programming manager of the programming for the educational games. That was important because of a later personality conflict. But I was given a schedule that EcoQuest had to be completed in 6 months, and the programming had to be done in 4 months. And I said, that's crazy. That we have Sierra has, in the time that I've been at Sierra at least, which was only a few years, but I said Sierra has never done a game in that schedule, and particularly with the VGA technology we're using now, it takes time to do the art, it takes time to do the programming, and to polish it. And you cannot, and their idea was basically put twice as many people on it and do it in half the time. And I said, have you read The Mythical Man Month? Doesn't work that way.
We did not have an easy time with management, let's put it this way.
So let's just say that that was about the end of my time as manager of the educational programming, because I said, nope, just got to do that.
Yeah, the original Frankenstein set was reused in Young Frankenstein 40 years later.
Yes.
Because it was so good. That's the incredible thing. It was, the money they put in it was still useful.
Molly Metroid, I guess, just showed up and asked if I missed much. And the answer is you didn't miss a thing, Molly. Because you'll go back to the video on demand after the stream and you can find out what happened before you got here.
Yeah.
You didn't miss it.
Programming completed in just 16 weeks. Nope. Yeah. The Mythical Man Month has some classic bits. It's worth reading if you want to do anything, in management, and actually the concepts there.
Well, this had to do with when Stuart Mulder came into the company, and what game did he do with us?
He did Quest for Glory. I mean, he did Mixed Up Fairy Tales.
Mixed Up Fairy Tales and Castle Dr. Brain. So Stuart Mulder came in as one of the second or third producers of the company, and he actually had a management background.
Yeah, surprise!
Unlike all the others. And he had a bookshelf full of management books that he lent me some of, one of which was The Mythical Man Month, and the other one was Peopleware, was one of the major, highly recommend the book Peopleware.
Right. Was the Mythical Man Month said that 9 women cannot produce a baby in 1 month?
I believe it did, yes.
Yeah.
It really had to do with adding people late in the project. They said basically you get into your deadline's 2 months away and you realize that you're not going to get it done in time, so you hire 12 more people, and they said now instead of being done in 2 months late, you'll now be done 4 months late.
Yes. And Sierra kept doing that. They never failed. They did that. It's like, no, they have management, but their management never actually read the books. Yes.
The big one on that was Star Citizen ran into that because they raised vastly more capital than they expected to, and got more and more ambitious with the games. Had thousands of developers in multiple locations working for them, and that's really difficult to manage on the project. You've got to have hierarchy. You've got to have responsibility at every level, and you've got to have coordination between the teams. Yes, as Inouye said, when it adds more people to a team, it creates more overhead, so more time is spent in communicating with people in groups.
Yep.
Or you have the failure to communicate, which was frequently happening in Sierra, in which case you just have more chaos.
Yes.
and more things done
Management
wrong.
is a discipline of its own as well. People think that if you have arms and legs, you're qualified to be a manager. You just need nepotism, and you're a manager. Well, yes, there have been a lot of those.
The old theory in the game or in software industry in general was that programmers would graduate to become programming managers, and well, some people that are really good technically are not necessarily good at leading people.
Yes.
My father was one of those. He moved from And he was actually probably a pretty good manager.
I don't think so. Considering how many companies he had to leave, I think, and considering how your father could be at times.
Well, he worked as a consultant for a while, and I once saw, he had his resume sheet, and he had like 40 or 50 different companies squeezed onto this thing, and I was really impressed at the time. And then it occurred to me that that only gave him time to work in each of those for like 1 month.
Yeah. Yep. Management is the discipline of blaming management problems on developers. Yes.
Yeah, I a couple times tried to go to top management, executive management, and complain about a manager, and that always ended up getting me fired.
Yep.
That never, the manager's never wrong.
Yep. Well, if those managers were just better at herding cats, it is true that there is, trying to manage a bunch of computer programmers and a bunch of artists is a thankless task. And I've done it. I had to do it on the first game, and it was impossible.
Yeah, there was the director.
Yes, and on Road to Redemption, I was the manager more or less of the teams. And so, therefore, it's next to impossible, yes. And it was much easier, I'll tell you that, with the team for Road to Redemption, because we were everywhere.
My second burnout was Shannara, after the first one was Quest for Glory 2, but the second was Shannara.
There it is.
There's our warning of massive flooding in the area coming on the TV.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
But I'll talk it over anyway.
Yep, I'll see if I can turn it off.
See if you can mute it.
Yeah.
I will do a little pause here while Lord tries to mute that. Okay. Should turn on the on-break sooner. Yeah, that was close to the sign of a dial-up modem. It's the emergency broadcast system. It's for South San Diego County. We're in North San Diego County, so we're not actually directly affected by it, except for the nasty warnings in the TV, which my mom's watching. Where was I? Management. Shannara. So my job in Shannara was that I was the one of the programmers. I was the lead programmer in charge of the other programmers. I answered the phone. I was the project manager communicating with our senior management was out in Virginia at Legend Entertainment, and we were out in California. I subleased the building we worked in from Bob Heitman, who had been my old manager at Sierra, and then ended up hiring Bob to do the map for Shannara. And then I took on the job when we decided we needed some 3D in the game of digitizing 3D, which meant staying up half the night or all night, tweaking the parameters and re-rendering stuff. And I realized that it's absolutely impossible to do all those jobs well. I effectively had 3 major jobs, that each of them was my full-time job, and something always suffers. Is the rest of the screen frame supposed to be blank? I don't know. You got it back now, Kitty Cat? I turned it on break for a few seconds and back to the stream. Hope you can see me. Can anyone see me? Can anyone hear me? Okay, fine. Oh, and Lori's back.
Mm-hmm.
The announcement is over.
Yeah, I thought it was the dial-up. Yeah, it sure sounded like that, yes.
So I said I would not repeat those errors when we came to Hero U Road to Redemption, kickstarting it. And so I decided I would manage the project and would not program and would not do the other stuff. And as a result, it ended up that I had no control over the programming and really chafed at that. I said, I really should have been a programmer on this. I should have learned Unity, should have helped out on that, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yep, but too late. Yeah, this is a narrow screen. It is not a widescreen camera, clearly. So if you're seeing black along, I don't know. It's got black around the edges.
Possible that I have the parameters set wrong.
Can you set them, change them?
I can make them a little bigger.
Okay, well, that's...
And, well, normally we have some kind of background under there.
Yeah, which we don't have.
I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, there's black at the top. You need to resize that out. Yeah, there it's good. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But at any rate, yeah.
Yeah, normally we have a picture behind there, and for some reason I have lost that.
Yeah.
I could add it,
You
but
can
let's
make
not.
anything 16 to 9 if you don't mind losing a bit of your frame. Yeah, yes.
So anyway, development horror stories. So how did we do Heroes Quest in 9 months? Hell if I know.
And mostly we didn't.
It was 6 months of prep first.
Yes. 6
Now,
months.
Quest for Glory 2, we didn't have the 6 months of prep.
Yes.
Because now we had a game that we had barely managed to finalize in late October and get out the door in November.
No, it was a little before. It was, we got it out in
game,
October.
The game shipped, no, Quest for Glory 2 shipped in November.
One I said.
Yeah, 1 shipped in October.
Yeah.
2 took 13 months and shipped. But that meant that between Quest for Glory 1, getting the game out in October, and starting effectively in January in Quest for Glory 2, we only had 1 or 2 months
of prep.
of prep. And in addition, we had new management at Sierra, including Bill Davis, that said, okay, you cannot make a game until you've storyboarded out the
so
entire
we can
game.
just make it that much
So that's
longer
another 2 months that we took off for getting approval on our storyboard and such.
Yep.
So that's why, it's a miracle we got that game out in 11 months.
Each game we had to go under different parameters that just took even longer. I mean, Quest for Glory 4 had so much going, wrong with its thing. It is a wonder it got out at all.
And it shouldn't have. We should have delayed it by 6 months, missed Christmas, gotten out of the following summer.
Yep.
And we could have had a working game.
Well.
But instead, I managed to convince management that it needed a remake, and we got the John Rhys Davis, and that wonderful voice cast, Ann Pershing, all those people, and we got it on CD as a talkie, so that was actually worth it.
Wow.
Did we both like the VGA remake of QFG 2? Yes. I thought the combat was too hard, but again, it may be that combat was just as hard as original.
I was just amazed that they actually got it out. So we really appreciated those people.
Really nice graphics. They did some very creative things. They had heard the rumors about the Saurus repair shop that we had to trim out of the game because of lack of disk space, and I got them in touch with Brian Hughes.
So they made it, it looks just like we remembered it to be, so, it was just, they did so much for that.
And we talked about the mini game that was supposed to have been there, Wizard's Whirl, so I gave them my very sketchy design notes on it, and they built a game sort of similar to what we had in mind for that. So that one we canceled because we started working on it, it wasn't coming together.
Yeah.
It just, it wasn't feeling fun, and it wasn't feeling balanced, and so that was why we took that out.
Yep. I was a kid wanting Quest for Glory 2 for Christmas, and my mom lied and said it didn't arrive on time because she wanted my surprise opening it on Christmas Day. I was so happy.
Well, it was barely out before Christmas Day.
You better believe it was. She wasn't lying. We did not. We got it out by the skin of our teeth. Yes, the voice actor who did the Li Shi in Quest for Glory 4 did 2 voices in King's Quest 8, and has done Goofy and Pluto for Disney. A lot of those actors were professional voice actors.
Did we have Cam Clark, I think?
We had Cam Clark, and there it is again.
Oh, there's a buzzy warning. So we're about to drown here, apparently, in the midst of a drought. I did just read an article that said there was a possibility of 100 inches of rain in California this year, and it's kind of hard to believe, but you never know. So yeah, these if you go to IMDb, IMDb as resumes. So look up the people that are doing our new game, Summer Days Tilly's Tale. Our lead actor is Zara Fuzzle. Zara Fuzzle as Tilly. And Zara is just an amazingly talented actress. She sent in audition clips for all the female characters, one of the male characters, and she could have played all of them.
Yeah. Jim Cummings, yes. Jennifer Hale as Katrina. Well, that was one of her first roles.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. So we helped create Jennifer Hale. Jeff Bennett is out of East. On Shanara, we had Jonna Stewart, and that was one of her first roles as like a 15-year-old, and She became briefly famous before she retired early.
Yep.
She got married and retired.
I love Meeps. Meeps only appeared in Quest for Glory 1. Well, that's because they were hard to...
Well, no, it was at the time. That was part of the magic of the valley. Spielberg was basically a magical valley, and we thought it would be really cool to have a whack-a-mole game.
We didn't know that Meeps would be that memorable. It was only afterwards that people started to make websites with Meeps on them and things like that. Really,
I want to make very clear here that I am responsible for the immortal Meep dialogue. Hiya, hiya, pleased to meet ya.
Yep, that was it.
So that was clearly that dialogue is the reason why they're so beloved.
True the rumors we heard over the years that John Rhys Davies did not like doing Quest for Glory 4 because
not at all. Not at all. We had a great time. He's a wonderful guy.
But
we had
it
a
was
wonderful time.
It was a huge.
He made a joke about it being the CD-ROM from hell because we had scheduled him for a certain number of recording days, and he had a vacation planned on Catalina, and when he discovered that he needed to do twice as many days in like 3 weeks of recording instead of 1 week or something, that was going to run into his vacation time.
Yeah, I mean, he was expecting the kind of thing you'd have for a movie script.
Or Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, or Saturday morning cartoon.
He thought this was like a Saturday morning cartoon where, a line of dialogue is, look over there! And as opposed to a line of dialogue in Quest for Glory, which is a paragraph.
Yeah, so he wasn't expecting what he got. He did a very good job, and,
Yeah, he's a real, I guess journeyman is the term, but really a master.
A professional, yeah.
A real professional, and so he basically had me turn off the system we were using. I was using a computer where I was giving him cues to when to read each line. He said, we don't have time for that. And instead, he went through the script and read all the lines in order with a very brief pause in between lines, and went through like an hour straight of reading lines, 5-minute break, another hour straight of reading lines, and stuff like that. And so he got our additional week's worth of recording done in like 2 days.
Jacobine asks if we had the Japanese box of Hero Quest. We used to have it. I don't see it though.
Yeah, I also got one of the mugs that was a Japanese Hero Quest mug that was a surplus from a promotional they were doing with their Japanese distributor.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, actually in that box over there that says Our Games 2, you might have that. Yeah, because I've got extra box games there.
That might have it.
Might have it.
No.
We thought of making Quest for Glory 5 in the style of Quest for Glory 1 VGA. No.
No.
Yeah, there's been talk about doing demakes of Quest for Glory 5. The problem with Quest for Glory 5 is twofold. One is that computers weren't fast enough at the time to do really sophisticated 3D modeling and animation. And two is that Sierra saved money. It would have been about $500,000 to license Unreal, and they didn't want to spend $500,000 on that. So instead, they spent probably $1.5 million in extra time creating their own engine and trying to adapt everything to it.
I don't know. We could give this one away at some point.
Well, I don't know. We're not going to do it soon, but
no,
sometime.
For a
like
New Year's or something. It's a.
That's the white box.
It hasn't been opened.
Yeah, that's still shrink wrapped.
Shrink wrapped, yes.
That's a priceless treasure.
Yeah, I know. We need
that for Kickstarter
have
swag.
3 of them, Corey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes some good Kickstarter swag.
Yeah. We'll have to find that.
So anyway,
was the amount of narrator lines for Quest for Glory 4 reason
so
we didn't do 5? Yeah.
Yeah, Sierra reinvented the wheel by making their own 3D engine for, and in fact, 2 different 3D engines for Quest for Glory 5. And we later learned they simultaneously made the same mistake up in Oregon working on Gabriel Knight and up in Seattle working on King's Quest 8. That they made 3 different 3D engines, and that was unimaginable in the period when I started Sierra. They had a really tight systems programming group that did SCI and all the, and worked on all the different systems level stuff. And the idea of having individual teams each make their own engine was just terribly. Thanks. Resubscription from Molly Metroid.
Yeah, that was just.
It was just insane to make 3 different 3D engines.
Yep, and even we tried to do for 5, we actually did the message editor. We tried to make that available to the other companies, and they just didn't.
And they rolled their own on that too.
Yes.
We had a very sophisticated message editor for Quest for Glory 5.
Yes. Quest for Glory 5 was different, but I loved it when it released. Spent my allowance on it and still have it. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, anyway, says, was the amount of narrator lines from Quest for Glory 4 the reason there wasn't narrator voice acting partially?
Yeah.
It was actually that we just felt that it was unnecessary to have voice for the narrator lines.
Because
we wanted to focus on the characters.
Well, in theory, I was writing it.
Okay,
so
fine.
the real reason was for 4, the narrator was a voice in my head. It was a character that was, I wanted to set the stage, this whole mood, this horror story mood, and John Rhys Davis did it perfectly.
You've heard it here first. When Lori writes a game, she hears voices in her head.
Yes. And honestly, it was the 5 didn't have that authorial voice to it for a lot of those things. I didn't write. Yeah, some of them were just done by there was a backup team of writers.
Armory 2006 repeats a very common trope that Quest for Glory 5 seemed rushed, and Quest for Glory 5 was the absolute opposite of rushed. It had a 1.5-year deadline as opposed to. Let me finish my story.
Yes.
Whether or not it's true. Quest for Glory 5 had a 1.5-year deadline as opposed to the 10-month deadlines in our previous games, and it actually took 3.5 years to develop. Now, I had been working for another company because they couldn't promise me that they were going to make Quest for Glory 5 at the time, so I went off to work for Accolade. And I came back a year into the project, and they said they hired me as a contractor to help finish the game and polish it and get it out the door. And they thought it had less than 3 months to go. That was the point at which I realized that with 1 year into the development, that nobody had yet looked at Lori's game Bible. So 0 of the actual story and quests and puzzles had been programmed.
Yeah,
I said it's going to take you longer.
It was rushed because it kept, things kept not getting or having to be redone and things like that. So we ran out of time.
Yeah, part of it was doing demos. Like we showed the game at not CES, the other one, something Expo in Atlanta, and basically the entire team worked in the demo for 3 months.
Yeah.
So that was 3 months not working on the game.
Yes, and then things like the programmers didn't know what they were programming and things like that.
They had a team of programmers that had been at Sierra a long time who were all experienced SCI programmers, but Quest for Glory 5 didn't use SCI. It was written in C++, and the lead programmer, Eric Langell, was a genius, but he did not have any experience leading commercial game team.
He didn't lead a team. He did his work over in the corner.
He was off in his office doing his own thing, and he didn't know that none of the programmers knew C or C++. None of the programmers knew C++, and there was no scripting language for them.
So any of the original Sierra workers that were still there had
no
clues. They had no idea how to program in C++, and no
training.
And no training. So scroll up still.
I'm sorry.
He had not done it. Voice, Buck Rogers says, voice annoys me because I don't want to miss out on it, but I prefer to read it. It's faster. I agree. I have a problem with that, too.
Yeah, one of the things we've experimented with occasionally is a typewriter mode where the text appears, like it was coming out of a typewriter on the screen. And it's really cute the first time you see it.
They did that for Rogue's Redemption.
Yeah, we did that for Rogue's Redemption. We were going to ship it like that, and I said, no, it's just too annoying. People want it. Don't want to wait for the text to appear.
I certainly didn't.
Especially not the 3rd or 4th playthrough.
Yeah. Only 1.5 years, yes. Quest for Glory 5 is fine. Not rushed, in my opinion. A lot of closure to the story arcs. Yes, the story that I wrote, I had the time to actually write it for a change. I was not the rushed one. I was not the one who had to have my art done 3 times to do it. I just had to work around those sort of things. So yeah.
And the music by Chance Thomas
Yep.
is amazing for that because, first of all, Chance is a really wonderful composer. But second, he had 2 years to work on the music.
Yes.
Normally, music is brought in about 3 months from the end of the project.
Yeah.
And they get, 2 to 3 months at best to write all the music for a game.
So yeah.
So some things were not rushed.
I had the demo CD with the multiplayer still included because that was what the game was going to be. It was going to be multiplayer. That was the point of the whole thing when I was starting out. But since they weren't getting the multiplayer done, I said, well, we'll also have a solo version for people that did not want to play the multiplayer. And it was the solo version that I kept writing, and that's why the solo version was the one that shipped.
That actually shipped. And
Because we could not get the multiplayer thing to actually work.
Yeah, Buck Rogers asked, was SCI, quote, programming, unquote, really programming or scripting? And Eden Waith answers correctly, yes.
I see.
So to my mind, scripting is programming. And I've had an anecdote that I've told before about visiting Naval Training Center in San Diego and an officer asking whether I was a programmer or a coder. And I thought that was a weird term. And so scripters are often thought of as coders. You've got the all the hard work's been done for you. The stuff that makes the animation appear on screen. It's just a call to say play a music clip instead of having to program all the MIDI stuff. I did that for Atari ST. I had to do program all the MIDI commands. And to me, real programming is it's probably machine language, but to me it's assembly language, which is effectively English language variant on machine language, and then all this stuff like Pascal and C and C++. That's a luxury.
Yeah, new wave stuff. Yes.
So SCI was an engine and also a scripting system and language built on top of C and assembly language. So programmers could do things like, say, parentheses, said, single quote, I/we, comma, love/like, comma, you/Lori, whatever. And then the game would then accept typed in input that matched those parameters. And synonyms and all this stuff was done automatically, but it still really is programming. And you could tell the real programmers that had some programming training that were working at Sierra versus the amateurs that were more gamers. That you could see that some of that was actually very sophisticated coding within SCI. It's just what use you make of the language.
Have you both thought about picking up the Adventure Game Studio again, just to make different point-and-click adventure games again? Well,
we looked at it briefly.
Yeah, at the time it wasn't very robust or useful, and now
it only did low resolution, and
now between our composer, our messaging editor, and
Unity
and Unity
and Inkle,
we have some use of Inkle in our current games, although it could have been used.
We could have thrown out the Inkle.
Yes. Other than that, we have all the systems we need to make a game, so it's.
But it is. It is much more time consuming and more bug prone than probably. So, have I ever thought about? Yeah. So I actually had a period of time before we did our Kickstarter for Hero U where I looked at a number of things. I looked at Inform 6. And wrote a little prototype that Lori wasn't too impressed with my one-room prototype. And
we tried several things.
Then I tried Inform 7, which claimed to be natural language and lies. It's actually very tight syntax requirements that appears to be English language but isn't really. And we just didn't think it looked good in pure text and wasn't the kind of game we wanted to make. So. Then we tried a web-based thing that Bob Heitman did a prototype for us, and that would be basically mostly text with a background illustration, or a character or whatever.
A little like what Legend Entertainment was doing with their games, actually.
Yeah, Legend basically had stills with characters and such, limited
Yeah.
animation.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we were looking at, and it just wasn't working for us.
And that was too limited for us. And then the programmer that talked us into doing Hero U, Andrew Golding, had been using Unity, so we decided to use Unity. You know, it's like he's familiar with it, great. And then he dropped off the project a month later.
Yeah.
So we've been using Unity ever since, but I haven't actually learned it.
Yeah. It's impressive that you actually got to conclude your series. So many game series didn't get that. Yes, it is impressive. It's next to unbelievable.
Yeah, we were very, very happy that
because we'd been
Entertainment
fired
called on us to do Quest for Glory 5.
There was no reason for Sierra to ever talk to us. They broke a contract.
They broke a contract.
That's a very different thing from laid off.
And we didn't get any compensation.
But with no compensation, they just threw us out effectively. So the fact that we got to make 5 was a miracle of circumstance happening. But then the reason we were working for Sierra in the first place was a miracle of circumstance. So.
And we're very happy that our Quest for Glory is now available again on GOG and Steam. But at the time, the Quest for Glory 5, Quest for Glory Collection mysteriously appeared on GOG 1 to 2 months after our contract expired.
Yeah.
So we have not seen any royalties from that. But we're still glad that people are still able to play the game.
It would have been interesting if the multiplayer had worked, but this was a game in the later 90s, so the internet was a new shiny thing. Well, remember, it was supposed to be the follow-up to what was the game that they had?
The Realm.
The Realm, which was a web-based role-playing game. I mean, a multiplayer role-playing game, which it was very, very primitive, but it was on the Sierra Network.
Yeah, the Sierra Network, which later became Imagination Network, all worked with. They had basically a router, so they got Sierra Telephone to put in T1 lines, and they had banks of like a dozen or 20 or 30 modems that connected into the lines, and basically it was internet by dial-up phone.
Yeah.
And it's just very limited in the number of people who can handle with that, but that's okay because the software, had to run on ran on mainframe computers. But it still had limitations to how many players they could handle in that. So it just wasn't as scalable as the internet.
Right. So when we were starting to do 5, it was because they wanted to do the Realm with a rebranding with the Quest for Glory brand. So that's it.
8-Bit Kitty Cat says you're not a real programmer unless you code in assembly, I guess. I've told the story before, but one of my great moments working for GIAC Computers was when Sid, an engineer up there, pulled out the cap over one of the panel lights on the computer there and plugged in 2 wires instead of a light bulb and hooked them up to a speaker and had me write a little piece of code that blinked that light very quickly and sound came out of the speaker and I could change the frequency and stuff like that. So you're not a real programmer unless you're working with ones and zeros and direct console commands.
Yeah. Yes. Otherwise that makes somebody who writes an Excel macro now a programmer. Yeah, well.
I think so, yes.
But if you recreate Doom in Excel macro, you are a programmer. What was it they did? A flight simulator in Excel? One of the early things? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they've done a bunch of ones. They've had Doom on a number of different devices that were not intended for games.
But have you thought about borrowing the idea Roberta Williams had for King's Quest Masters of Eternity 3D? I don't have any idea what that is.
We don't know what that idea was. Yeah. I mean, Quest for Glory 5 was 3D.
Yeah. One of the QFG speedrunners helped spearhead the letter writing campaign for Quest for Glory 5, Mr. Miller. Yeah, and we knew a lot of people.
The other one was Christiana,
so
who called herself Elsa von Spielberg. Had the Quest for More Glory site. She still has that.
Yes.
questformoreglory.com. And they had a letter writing campaign.
I know you played WoW, but why not make your own MMORPG with Quest for Glory elements with Unity or Unreal Engine?
Yeah, we should do that. Anyone got somewhere between $100 million and $1 billion to throw at us?
Yes, there's the question. There's the answer.
So for $100 million, we could build a game as big as WoW.
Yeah.
The other problem with WoW that I didn't know originally, but I've learned since then, is I made a desktop publishing program before Sierra that was supposed to compete with Microsoft Word, but be a big step up from that. Not just a word processor, but full desktop publishing on a personal computer. And I started the thing, and then 3 years later, when I had the thing about ready to ship, by then they were on Word version 4.0 or something like that. And they had all the desktop publishing features that I was going to put in, and they had all the marketing might of Microsoft behind them. And so I realized that if you get into the beginning, you can write a simple one-man project or two-person project, and compete with any of the big companies out there. But if they have years or decades to evolve their code, you can't keep up with that as an individual. You need the huge budgets, the huge
racing game
teams.
Easter egg in Excel. Maybe it was a racing game. I thought it was a
well, there's
flight
many
sim,
of them.
But no, I mean that was
They had
actually
Pac-Man.
shipped
They had
with
Pac-Man done.
yeah, no, this was one that was actually shipped in the program of Excel. So somebody in their company had actually done it. But oh well. Unity should be cheap though, with with already done assets. It's always going to be expensive, no matter what you do. Yes.
Yeah, and also Unity's pricing scheme originally, they've gone back and forth. So we paid a few $1,000s for lifetime Unity licenses when we started out, and by the time we were halfway through Hero U, they changed the rules on what lifetime meant.
Yeah.
And it basically said, yes, your lifetime on the version you bought, but as we come up with a new version every year or two, you have to pay another $1,000 for each version,
yeah,
or $1,500 per seat. And we had 30 people work on Hero U. And that eventually adds up to real money. They now have it that Unity is free for amateur projects, but as soon as you're making something like, I don't know, $50,000 or something like that in a year, you have to go up to at least the mid-level license, and at $200,000 you have to go up to the pro-level license.
We squeaked by for a while, but yeah.
So. Yeah, our costs actually, even with quote free out Unity, are not free.
Like as a project in school for network IT, we had to budget out a project, and my team got an MMO to budget.
Oh
Yikes.
my! So how accurate were you? And just the hardware side was at least $1 million.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So the problem they ran into with World of Warcraft in the first launch is Blizzard Games had a great reputation for Warcraft and StarCraft and so on, and they got too many players. There was too much hype about it, and all of their servers crashed under the load of people. That each server could handle up to, I think, 8,000 players or something like that, and they had millions of players try to come on. So they actually stopped shipping World of Warcraft for a period of several months while they acquired more hardware, built more servers, and then they had to rewrite their systems so that it could switch smoothly between servers, and doing a network of servers is much more complicated than a single server.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you never know when you start out if you're going to have 100 players.
And you couldn't possibly test that, you know?
Yeah. You can't test for... So WoW at its peak had about 15 million players, and you can't predict that. You can't test for it. You can't budget for it. You can't scale for it.
Yeah.
So nobody knows the answer of what it costs to build an MMO.
Hey, it's Joe Time says he remembers the Quest for Glory 5 had a monster contest where folks could submit a monster idea and it might be in the game. Did I have any say on that? I remember as a kid drawing various monsters hoping to get chosen. Well, I'm just thrilled to know you did that. We did. I
think we had a couple monsters in the game that were...
Yeah, I went through the images, well, at least the ones that the
that you kept?
Publicity people gave to me. I think they did the first triage, and then I got to see the ones that they wanted to, where we were going. And so, yes, we did pick from that. It was real, but I can't remember. I think the one that got it was a kid. I just remember that it was like an 11-year-old kid that submitted the winning one.
Oh, the other thing we need besides the $100 million to $1 billion budget is we need a potion of restoration that will take 30 years off of each of Lori's and my age, so that we'll be 30-somethings instead of 60. I mean, by the time we got to it, we'll be in our 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, starting to figure out what are we going to actually be able to produce as Transolar games, because we were supposed to spend a year or less building Summer Days, and that was going to be 2 games, Tilly's Tale and Feo's Adventure. Instead, we've taken over 2 years, I think close to 3 years at this point, and it's not out yet.
Yeah.
So if every game we do takes us 5 years, how many more games do we have in us?
Yeah. Even after those lizards that Blizzard learned, they still had network issues when Diablo 3 launching. Yeah, the problem is there are different network issues when it comes. You think you know what you're doing, you think you know what the problem is, and then when it hits you, you find that something else was the problem.
Now, I wrote my first multiplayer system when I was still in college.
Okay.
I got a summer job working for GIAC Computers in Canada, and I was like an intern working with their language, the OPL, which is kind of like SCI, doing stuff for a dairy cooperative. And meanwhile, their main team was doing a online banking project for whatever the bank in Vancouver, Vancouver City Savings. And when I agreed to take a year off school and work for them full time, they assigned me to write the multiplayer version of their banking system. And my father's company made quote smart unquote computer terminals that let you do fill in the blank stuff. They could have fixed areas that displayed things and then areas you could type in. And then we had a polling system that went out to each of the terminals and asked it, you got anything new for me? And then that went into a server-side code that dealt with it. I wrote all the server-side code for that. And what I discovered is that I could, first of all, I wasn't a good enough programmer to be on that task, still in college. But second, I learned that there would be things like hardware errors in one of the terminals would cause it to start spamming data that you couldn't stop. You had to then remove that terminal from the daisy chain and stop listening to it in order to be able to hear any of the other terminals. And a lot of, so it's all about error handling. Yep. And Bob Bates' theory on adventure game development is it's all about error handling. What he refers to as an error is if, say, you've got a puzzle in a room that you need the player to solve, if the player tries to leave the room prematurely.
Yeah.
And so he feels you have to have breadcrumbs and gentle nudging to keep the player from doing that, but to give them hints about what they're supposed to be doing. So error handling is all the work in a project.
So the Roberta thing was third-person view in 3D is where I was getting at. Well, we did third-person view in 3D with Quest for Glory 5 and with Road to Redemption, so I'm still not sure what that is. We're back to the Roberta's Mask of Eternity style.
The Roberta thing from Armory.
Yeah.
Something to do with Murray, the talking skull. The Roberta thing, first-person view 3D. Third-person view 3D. Yeah, so we did a unique 3D system for Quest for Glory 5.
Yeah.
And then we used, we were originally going to do Hero U. Okay, so Pass 1, pre-Kickstarter, Hero U was a text game, and then it was a text game with illustrations that was basically hypertext. You can click on keywords to go next thing.
Third version.
And then the third version for the Kickstarter was going to be a roguelike, top-down, with very simple flat graphics. And fourth version that we actually did was Sierra-style proscenium view with stages and so on.
It was 2D, and then the third,
all 2D, and it couldn't handle some of the things we wanted to do. So our team eventually talked us into going to 3D, and we ended up with a mixture of some 2D assets, but mostly 3D assets. So Hero U is full 3D. and you can scroll around and see different parts of the room and so on.
By Quest for Glory 5, I was in high school chasing girls. I didn't get that invested in that one nearly as much. No, you had other things in your life besides playing games, yes. Well, again, when you're running the network hardware for a massive number game of sort, yes, it's just going to be...
It says the launch week is going to have traffic far above and beyond your actual long-term peak traffic.
Right.
Maybe. In World of Warcraft, it actually steadily increased.
Yeah.
For quite a while, and then eventually dropped off. But yeah, you've got what they called server blades, each one of which was a computer on a board in its own right.
Yep.
And they had dozens of those. They had multiple data centers around the world.
And as Molly keeps saying, yes, you buy enough servers to handle your launch.
Then you've dropped hundreds of thousands of dollars that you don't need past the first month.
Right, because that's the drop-off.
Or if you predict that you're going to get 100,000 players at launch, and you buy enough equipment to handle the load of 100,000 players, and it turns out you get 10,000 players, you've already bankrupted yourself.
Yep. Low-level system programming prevents needing so much hardware. Yeah, well.
And of course, any player getting onto a massively multiplayer system wants it to be up and running and perfect immediately.
Yeah, and it is a balancing game. It's a predictive game. It's a balancing game, and most people can't do that. Yes.
So yeah, you have full teams of people just in charge of the hardware, just in terms of the networking code and so on. So that's why Blizzard has thousands of employees. You have hundreds of game masters that are just there to
I'm not
basically...
sure they have that many anymore.
I don't know if they do, but they did for a long time,
Yeah.
where basically their job was to answer questions and
be in the game.
And
Actually,
be in the game.
That was amazing. I met several people that were game masters, and you mean you're actually not a player? You're a real developer? Yeah.
And a lot of the actual game masters are also actual players.
Yes, they were.
They come back
the ones
and,
that I met were actually tried to make the game more role-playing.
Yeah, I was in a guild for a while that the people running the guild were game masters.
Yeah, I had a couple of those, so wow. Yeah. We got 100% on our project.
Yeah, good for you.
Included the best plan for creating a brand new MMORPG was don't. And yes, there is the correct answer.
Yeah, when we worked with Jason Ray and Explorati, he picked up an analogy from somewhere that the best way to make $1 million creating an MMO is to get $10 million in investment and pile it up all into a bonfire and set it on fire, but you miss 10% of it. You forget to put it in the bonfire and walk away with your $1 million. So, best way to make $1 million, start with $10 million, lose the other $9 million. So we did that on a much smaller scale on Hero U. We had basically put in about $100,000 of our own money, and we got $250,000 from an investor. We had a backer that put in about $30,000, and
2 Kickstarters.
Yeah, 2 Kickstarters. First one was for $400,000. Second one was $100,000. So $500,000 Kickstarter means about $300,000 to $350,000 actually available for making the game.
Yeah.
And the game cost us somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million, depending on how you measure it. The $1.2 million would have been if we actually paid ourselves.
Yep.
So we ended up working for free for 5 years.
Yep. And spending money, yes.
We got to pay for the
She
privilege.
said hi. Just swinging by to wish everybody a lovely weekend. Hope you're all well. Yes, we're all well. Hope you're having fun. Yes.
And normally we'd have been playing in one of Valiant Cheese's mini games, but here we are almost 2 hours gone. And so much to talk about.
Yeah.
We didn't even get into combat systems particularly.
So how come Quest for Glory 1 EGA switched from third-person combat to first-person? The footage from the 1989-90s catalog shows the hero fighting a Saurus in third person with a different combat interface.
Okay, so first person has advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage from our viewpoint is that by being in first person, you've got the Doom-like interface where all you have to see is the hero's hands.
Yeah.
And we only have to animate the arms.
We never did that, though, because it looked stupid.
Oh, okay.
We did the back of the person for the first game. You saw the hero swing his sword from the back.
But all of his back was fixed.
Well, yes, yeah.
The monster, when you fought something like a Saurus, the Saurus body was all fixed.
Yep.
So we only animated about 10 to 20% of the characters because that's all we could do, given the speed limitations like the Tandy 1000 that we had to support.
So
Very
then
slow machine.
we were always doing, it was always third person, but sometimes it was third person personal, which one was, where you were there, you were looking at the back, and you saw it from the back as if the monster were right in front of you. But our...
we did experiment some. And then for Quest for Glory 4, one Friday night I was working late, and Henry Yu was working late, and we got into a discussion about fuzzy logic, and I said, I've always wanted to make incorporate fuzzy logic into a game. He says, oh, I could do that in the combat system, and we talked about having a combat system that you would have a choice of playing like an arcade game or of...
like playing Street Fighter, because we liked Street Fighter.
Yeah, we liked Street Fighter. So first of all, we changed the viewpoint to be side to side and Street Fighter-like, and second, Henry put in the AI system, and he basically finished it in a weekend. It was unbelievable. So part of how we got those games done in 9 months is that we had brilliant teams that did stuff that was, I mean, my conversion of spending about 4 months, 4 to 6, I think it was 6 months, converting SCI to the Atari ST. That was impossible.
Yeah.
I just did it anyway.
Back in 2004 to 5, I joined up with a team trying to make an MMOR, etc. Fortunately, I didn't spend too much time on that, and that project never did launch. We know of many projects.
Yeah, Lori and I. So Explorati was the one that 2000. Lori and I worked with a group to make basically something like what became Second Life later on.
Yeah.
That we're going to have an immersive series of worlds. We're also going to have a dungeon master kind of thing where dungeon masters could come on and design a section of the game, and that we would have a rating system and a curating system to determine what was the best, and then would pay them a royalty based on how much time people spend in their part of the world. Incredibly ambitious. We finally got a big sponsor in Procter & Gamble that wanted us to make soap opera worlds. And that was just before 9/11, 2001, at which point a airplane crashed into the Procter & Gamble corporate headquarters, the World Trade Center, and that was the end of that.
Mm-hmm. There was a fan-made Quest for Glory.
It would have been a disaster anyway.
It would have been, yeah. It was definitely going to be a disaster. Morrowind engine, but it got canceled. I wanted to do something like Skyrim, but that would fail also. Yes.
Okay, so the team making Quest for Glory 2 VGA, taking advantage of the fact that Sierra never got around to doing a VGA conversion of Quest for Glory 2, spent years on it, and they went through, their team had constant turnover.
Because they were working for free.
They were all working for free, and it's hard. It is hard to make a game.
Yep.
Especially when they don't even have source code to work from.
Do you guys still get some cash from the more recent sales, even if it's a little... All we get money from is Road to Redemption right now, and it's not much.
Tikon Geo says, do you get tired about talking about the same stories? I hope you know we love hearing the stories. I'm glad, because I feel guilty. I repeat anecdotes all the time. I'm sure Lori certainly heard them all and lived them. and it's like, okay, are we just saying the same things over and over?
Yes, we're going to be boring you guys,
so that's why we tried to have the little breaks to play games and stuff, but we didn't get around to that this time.
Mm-hmm. Maybe making a good game is uber expensive.
It's uber challenging is what it is. So it doesn't have to be expensive. If you're doing it in as a part-time thing, you got a full-time job, or all the great inventors of the 18th century and stuff were basically independently wealthy.
Yes, that helps.
And so their inventions were basically a hobby that they turned into a career. And if you're doing that, if you're independently wealthy, you can sit at home and make a game, and it doesn't have to cost much of anything. But if you are not able to do it all yourself, and you have to hire people, then you're competing against the big game companies. And at the time I went to Sierra, I took a 30% pay cut for the privilege of going to work on games at Sierra. And that was typical of everyone there. And I made, they originally offered me $18,000 a year. I eventually settled in, I think, $27,000. Maybe I renegotiated $24,000. We eventually settled at $27,000 a year. I guess it was 24 they offered me. And I got $27,000 a year, down from $40,000 at my previous job. And today, a programmer at a big game company can making $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
As an indie developer, we cannot compete with people that will pay you $150,000 a year. So we get people that really love making the games and love working with us, and they're doing it generally part-time and have a full-time job.
Yeah. So all of our programmers were, you know...
we have one full-time artist now that we pay, what would have been was a really great compared to his work at a cafeteria at a university before that.
I think that was Eric that worked that one.
No. Mm-hmm. Eric worked in a warehouse. JP worked in a cafeteria at a university.
Okay.
And JP is an amazing artist and could probably pull in $100,000 a year working for a game company, but he likes the freedom of working at home and being with his family and setting his own schedule and having a lot of leeway on it. So he works for us for half or a quarter of that.
Okay, no. So, somebody said, did we mention the QFG1 randomizer? We did. Somebody else, and we'd never heard of it before. So.
Well, I read about it on our Discord, but I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah. So I hadn't heard about it. So, yeah.
And that's an interesting thing. It's kind of what we probably would have done with Hero U if we'd made it a roguelike.
Yes, we were planning that sort of thing for Rogue to Redemption before it became an adventure game.
I visualized it as kind of similar to a wizardry game in which at certain points in the dungeon design would be fixed, and at certain points there would be story elements that would give you a story snippet. But
I thought it was going to be random levels.
Well, it'd be random.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the levels would be fixed.
Oh, no.
Okay.
We weren't talking about that at the time.
The fights and stuff would be randomized.
Yeah. I really liked Quest for Glory 3 combat. 4 was fun, though. My favorite was 4. I did not care for the earlier combats, and 4 was my favorite, and then everybody didn't like that, and I was like, oh, darn, I thought that was the best. And then 5, I liked 5 a lot, too. It was very fluid, and I thought that was great.
Davor says, I thought fuzzy logic was Boolean values that were actually decimals. No, it's much more than that. And I actually started to write a novel called Fuzzy Logic.
I did too.
And Lori was going to collaborate. You were collaborating with me on it. We did the outline together. I wrote the first chapter. And I decided that it was boring and wasn't coming out very well, and I wasn't a very good writer. Which is to say I wasn't willing to work hard enough to make it a good novel. But what Fuzzy Logic is the idea of taking probabilities into account. And instead of saying a person is 6 foot tall, you could say a person is tall, and then the definition of tall would be that maybe a person that is 6'2" or higher is 100% tall. Someone who's 6 foot is maybe 80% fitting the tall category. Someone who's 5'10" might be 30% tall.
How does it apply to combat, which is more?
But the whole idea is that there's gradations. So something is not definitely true or false. Something is partly true and also partly false. And then you combine a whole bunch of these probabilities, and then you make a decision on what it's closest to. And you might even make an analog decision that says, instead of having your ship go full throttle, you put on 2/3 throttle.
So in our case of combat...
In the case of combat, basically, you use slider bars to say how aggressive you wanted to be, how much magic you wanted to use, how much defense you wanted to use, and then the game system combined all those and did a fuzzy logic calculation and said, okay, at this particular phase of the combat, you're going to cast a flame dart spell. And at this point, you're going to jump up and try to evade the monster spell. And meanwhile, the monsters are working similar fuzzy logic calculations, and we had a set of characteristics for each monster about how aggressive they were and so on.
The combat system in 4 is really rewarding if you learn all the secrets buried in there. Yes, if you actually play the...
Which, by the way, we don't even know.
Yes, well, to an extent, you could time when something was going to cast a spell, you knew when you should do something. So you could really real-time predict things, dodge in real time, slow real time. It feels very slow now.
Yeah, Lori expected on 4 that she would end up using the AI system all the time, and in practice, she really enjoyed doing it real time. And make the decisions yourself.
Quest for Glory combat system I miss. It was the only one where I felt like it mattered in the entire series. Okay,
Quest for Glory 4, yes.
Yes, that it was really integral. Well, the 5, it was integral, I'll tell you, because you had to get past those sushi
Whereas the 5, I
villages,
totally
and
failed, but that was because there was a debugging thing that actually got left in, at least the build I had, that let me say, get the story or jump into the action. So I picked the jump into the action, and that immediately put me into a fight against Roman soldiers or something like that. And there were about 10 of them against me, and I had no ranged attacks, and there was nothing I could do.
Yep.
I died.
I was trying to remember
fun.
if there was some special paladin skill, glowing sword or something that's tricky to turn on. Well, there was a paladin sword. I don't know how.
I think it was automated.
Yeah. I swear the Coles need a GoFundMe. Yeah.
Okay, we do have a Patreon, and this is time to advertise our Patreon.
Yes, right.
If you want to contribute to our development, you can join, and let's see, my page.
No, just use that page. I mean, that's just,
Here's the main page.
Yeah.
Here's the main page for our Patreon. You can join our Patreon monthly or annually and get all sorts of unique stuff. It's only for patrons, but about 80% of the stuff we put up here is public.
Yeah, so if you want
to
just visit
if you just want to learn more about stuff we're talking about on the stream, just come and visit the Patreon. And don't subscribe, but if you want to contribute to help our work, then join the Patreon.
Yeah. Not bored at all. These stories lost in time because the internet back there wasn't.
There wasn't internet back then.
Yeah, it's great hearing it. Yes. So that's the argument for guaranteed basic income. Unleash mankind's creativity.
Yes,
definitely in happiness. And if everybody were not having to be terrified about they're going to how to make the next dollar.
Yeah, okay. So to give you an idea, when I started at Sierra, first of all, I took that 1/3 pay cut, which brought Lori literally to tears because we said we can't live on this. We had a house in San Jose. We had a young child. We dropped all that. Lori stayed behind and sold the house. And if we'd held it for 5 more years while I was working at Sierra, we could have sold it for twice the price. If we'd held it until now, twice.
Twice. It had more than doubled.
It had more than doubled in that period.
In one year.
Okay.
Because that was the year of the housing rates.
If we'd held it until now, we would have sold it 10 times the price.
Yeah.
At least it would be a $1 million home today or more.
Yeah.
It was a $100,000 home when we bought it. We gave up everything we had and moved to. I moved to Oakhurst, and then I almost got fired 2 weeks in, and we were in absolute terror that we were going to be left with no money in the bank, no job. No
and this
home.
was after 3 years of Corey working as a self-employed, trying to create that software publishing.
Yeah, my father helped support us in that. Is the only reason we were able to do that. Yeah. But as a result of that, he paid the payments on our house, and so we did sell our house at profit. And my father got all the profit on that, which more than paid him back.
So we didn't have any money.
So we had no money.
Yeah. We're willing to take risks, and that risk.
That risk led to Quest for Glory.
Yeah.
But it was terrifying for us. And multiple times when I was working there, there were major layoffs, and we always thought we'd get caught in it, and we did get caught in one.
Yeah. So there is no guaranteed income.
Yeah, so there's no time to be creative and stuff.
Yes, but it's up there. So basic income is a great idea. Pity it'll never happen because of the legions of people who are convinced that the world has an epidemic of laziness that needs to be exterminated to the exclusion of everything else. Yes, if I have to work, I don't want anybody else not having to work just as hard as I am. Yeah,
but people don't understand the importance of laziness. I've always considered myself super lazy, and yet I worked for 50-hour weeks at Sierra and 60-hour weeks. And that's because I loved what I was doing and I cared about it. I wanted to get it right. And before that is, commercial programming stuff and systems programming stuff. I worked 50-hour weeks because you don't want to leave before the task is done. Yeah. And sometimes it takes longer to get things done than others.
Yeah.
But I still considered myself lazy. And you need that lazy period. If you're going to be creative and you're going to do game design, you have to have time off. You have to get out there and experience things.
Yeah, our advantage of coming into game development
was we were old.
We were old. We'd already known how to play games and create games and things for the role-playing world. So we
did tabletop D&D stuff for 10 years.
And we had all this background in mythology and all these things that we already had stored up. So
if you get your typical person wanting to become a game developer during or straight out of high school, they don't have the world experience to make a Quest for Glory. They can make a pretty good game. I understand the early Akalabeth and Ultima 1 were really mishmashes, but they had a lot of creative ideas in them. But you get that discipline of taking the creativity and making it coherent and doing great stories and so on with age and experience. I can't say necessarily that we're better at that in our 60s than we were in our 30s. Probably not. But you need time off. You need to relax. With Hero U, the challenge has been that we were scraping for every penny to be able to pay our developers.
Yep.
And so there was no time for me to be creative doing that. And that's why I handed everything off to Lori. So Lori got to be lazy and lazily work hard at writing.
Yeah. So Buck Rogers is talking about... you work on other people's projects to avoid being thrown into the streets. Yes. Yep. Nothing I can do other than inherit money or win the lottery. Yeah. And unfortunately, you can't
do you have a cute picture for Michael?
Maybe, yes. And you're preaching to the choir. Exactly. We're all that sort of thing. And choosing is where you start in the release version of Quest for Glory 5. Yes. I am disabled in the street.
There's our grandson.
I see. Oh, yeah. That's
and another kid over at preschool.
Yeah. You were old during HQ1? I'm 40. I'm old as hell then. Sadness. Well, old relative to...
Most of the people at Sierra started at about 20.
Yes. Old relative to that, yes. Now, we're 60-something, and we're still making games, so, just because you're 40, you're not old as hell yet. Sorry.
Yeah, and in our 60s, we're not old as hell.
Yeah, no.
But we have our, other responsibilities. Right now, it's funny because instead of getting to enjoy our old age and go on cruises and stuff, which we're going to do next few months, we actually went to Hawaii a few months ago, so we get a little bit of free time. But we have a full-time job caregiving for my mother.
Yes.
So we can't go places and do things without always thinking about, okay, who's gonna sit with her? Are we gonna take her with us? Have to get her up and ready in the morning and so on. So there was a thing posted. I mentioned Jason Ray that would work with Explorati. He posted a thing about manager schedule versus developer schedule, and managers typically work on a daily calendar where they have 1 hour blocks and they set up meetings for tasks for 1 hour each, and that works fine for a manager because they're basically just talking and making decisions based on what happens in the meeting and so on. A developer works more in 4 hours to multi-day blocks. A 4 hour block where you basically takes about an hour to ramp up and remind yourself of where you are in the code and so on. And 3 hours of then working on iteratively improving it and getting it to work. And if every hour during that, your phone beeps or the TV comes on or you have to go help your mom or there's a phone call or a manager calls you to a meeting, you never get that. You never get 4 hours in a row and you never get anything done. Yeah.
Seriously, I think pure capitalism is evil. We're certainly seeing the evil effects of pure capitalism. Yes. Well, how would you feel if whoever owns the rights to Quest for Glory decides to
reboot? Yep.
Yes.
It's Activision Blizzard.
They tried to do it justice instead of a fighting game. Honestly, I don't think anybody would want to do it. The games are too complex. They're too expensive to make. And you have to...
They had that idea with King's Quest, though.
Yeah, well, no, King's Quest is a much easier game to do, and they they should have been able to do that one right. And the fact that it didn't make them a fortune meant it's never going to happen, yeah.
And, in fact, the numbers we were talking, a bestseller in 1990 was 100,000 copies.
Yeah.
A bestseller today is 10 million copies.
Yeah.
So if you put out an adventure game and it sells 500,000 copies, that's that's just a little blot somewhere on the.
So therefore, it's probably never going to happen. But yeah, Molly Metroid says, "I'm glad that we've had the chance to interact with you guys. Never mind on such a regular basis." Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed
And these
it.
videos we're putting up. Okay, so all the videos that we put up on Twitch, they're on Twitch for 2 weeks as a video on demand, and then I am exporting them to our Transformer Games channel on YouTube. And so you can find all the past talks and find out how much we repeat ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, really. Regulated capitalism works pretty well. Snag
Maybe.
is concentrated capital is tough to beat with decentralized democratic opposition.
There's also a weird thing that inflation is uneven. So at the time when Apple II started, or the Apple Corporation started, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were working out of one of the garages. And they had a used VW van that they sold to give them capital enough to start the company, and were able to leverage themselves up from there. At the time when we started working at Sierra, games had budgets of like $100,000 to $200,000, and a team of a dozen people could make a game, and that people made, 15
As long as everybody was paid under the market value.
As long as everybody, nobody made market value payment and so on. They got games out. By the time 10 years later we were working there, the games cost several $1 million to make. And today, a AAA game costs, there's games worth the AAA games of their day. AAA game today costs about $50 to $100 million to make.
Yeah.
And if you look at, like an individual, if you're going to college, it can cost several $100,000 to attend university for 4 years, let alone get a master's degree or a PhD. And things just don't scale properly.
Yeah.
Just your basic rent,
Yeah, I could pay for a semester of going to Arizona State, working for Baskin-Robbins. So it just doesn't work anymore.
So my summer job up in Vancouver, that I paid $125 a month to rent a room in a house, and you can't find anything like that today. So I made enough money in 1 year of working there at I think it was $10,500 a year or something like that. Maybe I got a raise to $12,000 when I went full time. That paid for my senior year of college.
Oh, hi, Rich. Welcome, welcome. Yes, we're really trying to wind down, but yeah, you didn't miss anything but a long bunch of nattering on things. Yes.
Well, Eden Waith mentions that $50 or $100 million per game is getting the blockbuster movie price, but games, the game market has exceeded the film market.
Yes.
Part of that is because there's so many games out there. There's a lot more games than there are films released each year.
Yeah.
But part of it is that the few games such as Call of Duty and World of Warcraft, and you could probably name them on 10 fingers, the big hit games are gigantic.
Yeah. Okay, so hypothetically, if Activision was going to spend more money to make it to some other designer, would you guys be upset or glad to see Quest for Glory continue in some way?
We'd be glad.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we were thrilled with the remake of Quest.
We'd be even happier if they brought us in as consultants and paid us.
Really.
I mean, the ideal way to do a Quest for Glory. So the one way to do it is to say, the Coles absolutely have to write it. So bring them in full time.
Right.
We don't want to be we don't want to work that hard.
We certainly don't want to have to work in a building
and have to commute into work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if they brought us in as script consultants and we were there to,
we'd be thrilled.
Yeah, help come up with the initial story and then
we're thrilled when any of the amateur people try to remake it in Morrowind or 3D or whatever they're doing. We're always thrilled with people that actually try it, even though we'll never make any money off of these things. We love that people are trying to keep the game system.
Yeah, so I started. I'd been playing games with my friends in Chicago. I was working in Chicago remotely, and I learned how to play D&D there. And I wrote my own scenario one night in a hotel room, which became the Tower of Indomitable Circumstance. And everybody loved it, so I decided to publish that as a game, and that took like 2 years. But I said, okay, now I'll become a full-time game writer. I will write these modules and stop programming and become a role-playing game writer. And then I figured out my royalties in the first game was like $1,500. And I was making $18,000 a year starting, and I was making more than that by that point. I was making, I think, 24,000 or something like that. And I said, basically, in order to almost break even with programming, I would have to churn out one of these scenarios every month. And I said, I just don't have that many ideas, and I can't do it that fast.
Yep.
So I kind of said, okay, this is going to have to stay a hobby.
Yeah.
So we have so many projects that we kind of want to do. I want to take Lori's novel with Michelle Baker and do a little light editing on it and get that out. And it actually wouldn't be that hard, but I'd have to get Lori's and Michelle's cooperation. I'd have to take the time on it myself. We started doing the Heroes Feast cookbook, which would be more like Cooking for Glory or something. I like that title, Cooking for Glory. That would be really fun to do, but we really didn't do more than a few recipes for that. We certainly didn't do all the work of lining up illustrations.
No, we had too much other stuff going on, yeah.
Doing another Quest for Glory, that's stepping in the same stretch of water twice. We've been there.
Yep.
Done that.
Yep.
Hero U is our new thing. We really want to do Hero U Wizard's Way, but we don't, it would take so much time and effort and money.
And money.
The
money we
do
don't have, right?
Yeah, but if we had the money, I don't know that we'd want to take the time and effort.
Well, we would want to take the time and effort on it.
But if we could work as consultants and have someone else do the work on it, that's the right way.
That would be the right way, yes. Are you guys aware what happened with Star Control's creators and the trademark's new owners? I've not heard about it.
I was following all that stuff.
Talking about that earlier today.
Star Control True, and something about Orquan, which is one of the races in the game, and that was actually a project that got handed over to Accolade.
Okay.
At the time, I was working for Accolade on a game that didn't release.
Okay.
That was a God game.
Yeah.
And Legend Entertainment, where we had been previously consulting, was contracted by Accolade to make Star Control 2 or 3. And Bates and Mike Purdue were working on that. And
you're not talking Star Command.
That was Star Command.
Oh, it was?
Yep.
Okay.
Star Command or Star Control?
There's
Maybe
two of them.
one.
There's a Star Control creator.
It was Star Control. Yeah. It was Star Control.
Yeah, I was Star.
Yeah, that was Legend.
Okay, yeah.
And so they got into that. And then the people that did the original game did a sequel to it and then got told to cease and desist because the rights were now owned by someone else.
I was thinking Star Citizen, and it's not.
No, Star Citizen is something else entirely.
Yeah.
And then 30 some years later, they've been entangled in legal things, and it's not clear who owns the game, who's in charge of it, who should be making it, who made the best version of it, etc.
Oh yeah.
But Star Control was supposed to be Star Control 2 in particular was supposed to be a really great game.
Yeah.
Urquan Masters and Stardock, Brad Wardell, who's vile.
Great.
Don't know him personally.
Yeah. You deserve to be consultants at this point. These Corps are too stupid to hire for that. They think it's a retirement plan. They're wrong. Yes, everybody thinks they're an expert is unfortunately true.
And also, nobody wants to pay people what they're worth. And yet, they hire people and discover now that programmer that's been there a few years is they have to pay them $150,000.
Yeah.
And certainly back when we were doing stuff at Sierra, we heard about Texas Instruments had the habit of hiring engineers straight out of college, working them 80-hour weeks for a year or two until they burned out totally, throwing them out on the street and hiring new people straight out of college. So, and Sierra was not too much different from that.
Yeah. Brad Wardell does not believe the bee allergies are real, and to prove this to some of his allergic employees, released live bees into the office.
Ah, Lori's allergic to bee stings.
No, my brother was.
Oh, was he your brother?
My brother was, yeah. Never mind the sexual harassment and other allegations. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Those are lawsuits waiting to happen, though.
Well, the problem is that most game companies start out as a bunch of hobbyists.
Yeah.
Getting together and having fun with the game, and they're not selected by management ability. They're not selected by being mature personalities. In fact, most of the people we knew in D&D, we were part of a club called the Dragon Slayer that was a bunch of people that could not work for a living and attracted mostly players that couldn't afford to pay the monthly dues. Taekwondo was the same way, actually. A lot of the people that, they basically got students that couldn't afford to pay the dues for Taekwondo, so they would work sweeping the floor and stuff like that. But there's only so many floor sweepers that you have, room in your budget to hire. If you don't have actual people putting in real money into it, you can't run the company.
Yep, and programmers straight out of college aren't exactly the ones you want for quality programming. That is very true.
Yeah, hard to say, but yeah. So yeah, I worked with one programmer who had been taught that you document every line of code, you write comments for every line of code, and actually worked for a company that measured productivity based on thousands of lines of debugged code a year, so I had a program that had lots of blank lines in her code and stuff like that. Metrics like that don't work because programming is inherently, it's discipline, but it's also creative. And if you don't have the creative imagination to come up with the right algorithms, then you're writing inefficient code.
So, at any rate, it's almost 4:30 right now, and we'll be back.
Yes. So we should roll up. We'll roll up in 7 minutes. You got 7 minutes to ask questions.
I
We'll
see.
answer them.
Yes. So yeah, programming is a craft. Okay. Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yes.
And I was still learning. I mean, by Sierra, I know it pretty well. I mean, I could do the machine language, the assembly language programming to convert to SCI. I could do pretty well, but I still needed help. Like Bob Heitman was the one who said, "Don't try to convert the entire interpreter at once. What you want to do is take this one graphics routine and write code that will draw one pixel on the screen. That will change the color of a pixel."
Yeah, and then of course programming is evolving over this time. I mean, a lot of the programs
I hear they have something called software engineering now.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how engineering it is, but learning how to steal code from other things is a skill.
Yeah, most code these days is not. You don't write the code. You take a lot of building blocks and libraries and subsystems that are you can download and then incorporate into your program. So you do not write a program to copy a string in reverse, which is one of the typical programming tests they give you. Somebody's written that. You get the module. You get a book of patterns, and you use the pattern.
Yep. I think I'm creative, but it took me 10 years to properly document my code.
Most people never do that.
Yeah,
so you're 10 years, you're 100 years ahead of the game.
Yes. Were there any jokes you ever had to remove from Quest for Glory because they were too adult or anything like that? Yes.
Oh yeah.
And I was never in the any of the Quest for Glories. No, up to 4. Nobody ever looked at my scripts. That none of the administration ever saw what went in our games.
It was mentioned that like Radio Shack had a problem.
We had to
because of adult themes in one of the games,
right.
And I think we had to tone that down. But
but
Quest for Glory 5 was the first time that an executive actually played the game.
Yes, and unfortunately, they did not care for Nawar's lines. They did not care for the line, "Is that a sword in your pocket, or are you just happy
are you happy to see me, or is that a dagger in your pocket?"
Yes, they did not care for that line and had me remove it. And I tried to argue with them. You realize, of course, to come to that line, you've already played several days worth of things to get to that line. No Radio Shack level administrator is ever going to see that line.
And that we stole the line from Mae West, who used it in films 50 years earlier.
Yeah, so it's like, why are you... But yeah, we skipped... There were a couple of them that Nawar said that got cut. And a few more that when it stayed in...
They also didn't like No Man's Land and is too silly.
Yeah, but that was because the voice was horrible.
Well, yeah.
So, therefore... what happened was when we...
It was a very high-pitched, silly voice.
It was terrible.
Squeaky voice.
And the direction wasn't thrilling on it. So we had to redo Elsa von Spellberg's voice because it was too Germanic and sounded French. And we had to... because it was a real German person speaking with a real accent as opposed to a Hollywood accent. As a result... You couldn't understand what she was saying sometimes, and others, she did not sound German to the American Hollywood ear. So
Yakobin27 says, "Hire me as a programmer. I've never gotten past the hello web part for Java." That's exactly how Sierra hired animators in the Quest for Glory 2 period when they were doing the transition to VGA. Is that they hired Bill Davis, who worked for a advertising studio in Hollywood. And he did some of the little cartoon things that were used as scene transitions in The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So the idea then was to do a assembly line art. and that you would bring in a senior artist, would design the characters, and then would define 2 or 3 keyframes of the animation, and then junior artists could easily come in and fill in the in-betweens cells on the between the keyframes. And what they did is anybody who was working at Sierra...
All of the secretaries got to become artists.
Yeah, the secretaries all became artists. Anybody who lived in the area. Bill Davis's ski instructor was hired as a manager.
No, he was just an artist.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was not based on education or talent.
Yeah. Let's see. Yes, you want that fake German accent. You want something that will be recognizably German. Without being too German.
One of the reasons Heroes Quest for Glory 1 was set in Germany was because I had spent a year in high school as an exchange student in Berlin, and so I spoke a little bit of German, and so we were able to slip in some German phrases and stuff like that. But you do not want true German that is completely incomprehensible to the Americans. You want something that sounds a bit like, yeah, that is German. This is German. You know, that has the touch of the accent.
Yes, just a touch.
German and the J's turning into Y's and that sort of thing.
So you just want a flavor. Yeah, so voice acting really is an art. You want something that sounds like people think it should sound rather than what it really sounds like, and so that was a problem with that. And we got to recast Gnome Anne to a voice of a person who could say those lines cold, read her lines, and get me my feeling, the impression and the excitement and the joy of those ridiculous
part of
lines,
the voice recording you weren't there for, right? There was the voice recording.
Yes, I was. Yes, that was it. I was not there for most of the voice recording.
And we had a director that had done Saturday night animation and Saturday morning cartoons, and wanted to do, thought everything should be over the top.
Yeah, and cartoony. So, yes, but then we got it right. I was there for 2 weeks of thing, and it was I love doing voice acting, directing, and things like that. All right,
it's 4:30, but we could answer one last question.
Right.
Do you have a favorite joke from any of the games? That would be the ultimate joke, of course.
Yeah, I think my favorite was when he used Hukau in Quest for Glory 3. I like the cheetah joke.
Oh yeah, that's
the claws.
What's the difference? Is one has a pause at the end of the clause.
Yes.
What's the difference between a comma and a cheetah?
Yes.
One has a pause at the end of the clause, and the other has claws at the end of its paws.
Yeah.
So that's probably my favorite.
Curious about kitty cats.
We missed one?
Yes. It's funny that in Quest for Glory 1 EGA you had the dragon burn up Sierra's logo in the intro. Did they not have a problem with that? As I said, they never watched. I mean, they didn't realize how much parody were in these games. Like Rick Cavan, the general manager, going through in
becoming Cabine.
In Space Quest, using the whipping the people, which was, really what we felt like at times.
So, it's one of those things, I don't care what you say about me, just spell my name correctly.
Yes.
Any publicity is good.
Yes, Bill Davis thought it was funny to be Autovis, and until he
got on a bulletin board and someone says, well, I'm not listening to what you have to say, you're the evil Autovis.
Yes, and suddenly realized maybe it wasn't a good thing to be parodied in our games. So, no, they didn't actually notice these things.
He was proud of it at first.
He was proud of it.
And should be.
It should be, yes. He wasn't, as a villain as he was still a hell of a lot better than Al Skirva and all those other idiots we parodied in there, too.
Oh, well.
But, no, Sierra never looked at our things.
Anyway, we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Anyone know what the date is on that?
Yes, you can
that'll be the 27th.
It would be the 27th?
August 27th.
Very good.
Will be the next stream.
August 27th, yeah.
We may miss one stream at the
that's October, so we don't have to worry about that.
That's going to be a problem, because that's our Halloween.
Yeah, I know.
We're going to be...
but we won't, because we can have a... that's November.
Yeah, it's October 31st. So we're leaving on Halloween Day.
Yeah, we are. So we could have a marathon on the 29th, a Halloween marathon or something.
Yeah, except we'll be getting ready.
No, we won't.
All right.
Okay, but we'll
work out the schedule.
Thanks for another enjoyable stream. Fascinating to hear all the behind-the-scenes stories. I'm glad we're very good at talking.
Yeah, the biggest thing about making a game is that you don't make a game. You make a million pieces of a game.
Yeah.
And there's so much to it. There's so much in marketing, planning, writing, creating the art, animating, programming, testing, back in the disc days, manufacturing the discs, making deals with distributors, bribing the stores to have
literally
end caps and shelf talkers and stuff like that. It's just making a game is just a gigantic thing, and anybody can make a quickie game and get it out there. But getting a really polished commercial game, that takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and money.
Yeah, and the money part too.
So, bye. Have a great weekend. On that note,
yes.
we will thank you and see you all in 2 weeks.
See you next time. Bye-bye.